Welcome back to another FPL deadline stream, this time out of Gameweek 17, and Christmas is almost upon us. We have more things to discuss, and I've made multiple transfers overnight before those price changes that occurred at around 1:30 AM in the UK. So now I would only have around 2 free transfers. I try to reflect that, of course, in the graphics, and you can see the full context, but I have bought in Ekitike Harry Wilson, who was bought in very early on in the week before all the price rises he has experienced recently. And I've got a solid base now for the Christmas period, but I just activated the wildcard in 16, which was kind of mixed bag up until this point, but I think ultimately we can judge that chip with the long-term effects of that booster, not just one game week in particular. But captaining Igor Thiago last week was a major mistake. Obviously, Saka and Haaland were the standouts, and I just don't really see anything other than the Erling Haaland captaincy this time round, but the vice captaincy is on Phil Foden. I think the likes of Thiago and Saka would be decent options as well, and you will see my top 10 captaincy list very soon. The same goes for the clean sheet odds, also the team news, injury updates, you name it, predicted lineups, it's all going to be here. And I'll also aim to build a best free hit squad because that was requested by the people as well, so that will also help some people watching. And just a reminder, if you have any chips remaining, use them before the Gameweek 19 deadline, because afterwards then you have the second half of the season, and if you use a chip there, it's going to be completely different, and you would have burned any from the first half of the campaign. So good to see you, Easy, and yeah, the wildcard so far has been mixed bag, but I'll give it time. Of course, I just made a lot of transfers. I'll have 2 available moves next week, and the kind of ideal scenario is to roll and have a strong position, because I've said this before, ideally you'd be saving on to those transfers as much as you can, but I went for something very aggressive overnight, and we'll see how it pays off in the end. Cylindra says, hey Dylan, I'm on a bench boost with Dubravka, Van Heck, Anderson, Raul Jimenez on the bench. I have 3 transfers, but used one to sell Anderson to Wilson. With 2 more transfers, should I sell one of Thiago to DCL or downgrade Raul to DCL? Because currently I have a triple up on Fulham. I'd probably just leave the team as it is. I'm not a big fan of triple up on Fulham either, so that's why I also sold Jimenez. I saw an opportunity there to go for Ekitike or Bowen. Those were the 2 standouts. So yeah, I think probably keep things as they are for you. Which player do you regret not buying on the wildcard, says Easy. Difficult one to say. I'm fairly happy with most of the picks I went for in general, but yeah, there might be 1 or 2 that are skipping my mind right now, but there are probably a few choices, mainly Bowen or Ekitike up front instead of Raul Jimenez, but that obviously requires a completely different structure, which I also went for by going from Bruno Guimaraes to Potts, and it gives me enough money to also buy O'Reilly for Dan Burn. But yeah, I'd say one of those strikers and possibly O'Reilly. Is selling Saka to fund a better team a good move? Then I can afford O'Reilly, Ekitike and Cunha. I was in a similar position to you, so doing something like Saka to Semenyo would be slightly appealing this week, but that's difficult to say. I think with Saka, he is one of the best midfielders in the game right now. He has shown real consistency for the past 6 game weeks, but yeah, who would you sell Saka to? Cunha? I'd rather go for Semenyo personally, but Cunha is being highly recommended by different algorithms. I've been seeing that. I'd definitely consider it, but at the moment I'd lean towards keeping Saka, who is right up there in my captaincy list as well. Start Vandenberg or Van Dijk. Not a big fan of either this week, but it's going to be Van Dijk. Sam says, hey Dylan, 0 free transfers, 0 in the bank. Really wanted Saka. Taking in Klein for Bayram. Is it worth it so I can bench boost with Dubravka, Virgil, Krupi and Klein, or bench boost with 3 players, only had Bayram for the extra funds? Well, yeah, if you're definitely bench boosting this week, then buying Klein for Bayram will help you, and even like for the next couple of weeks as well, until Munoz is back, I think that could be the case. Good to see you, FPL Kevy. Good luck, bro. Going Foden captain, I think. Just bored of captaining the same as everyone else. I get that, and that's why I did something a little bit different last week, but being different sometimes doesn't pay off in this game, but you have to pick and choose your moments and have a bit of fortune. I think this season, Haaland has been the default captain, so when you do go against him, and we have seen Foden outscore him multiple times, you have to pick your moments wisely. Good morning as well, Ahmed. My team is Raya, Verbruggen, Cash, Senesi, Gay, Virgil, Mukiele, Wilson, Rogers, Semenyo, Shada, Foden, Thiago, Mateta, and Haaland. I will wildcard. Any advice or changes I should make? It's a solid squad, but I think the wildcard could certainly help you out in certain areas. And there you can buy one of Bowen or Ekitike for Mateta, who I still like, by the way, but Mateta has definitely dropped off recently. Kevin Schade, I'd get rid of, despite him being back from suspension. I think the likes of Wilson, Rogers, Semenyo, Foden look solid, but there's definitely space for Bruno Fernandes in that midfield. You've only got Raya to cover Arsenal. You might want to consider having another player, so either Saka in the midfield, Declan Rice, or you go for a defender as well. But you don't need Raya and Verbruggen. I think one main goalkeeper, and I think Raya is absolutely fine. And then having Dubravka would be more than enough. And defensively, you could make one or two tweaks, but yeah, I think you're in a good position regardless. But I do understand wanting to wildcard, and I think you could make a few incremental upgrades, particularly in the forward line, and I would say Bruno Fernandes is the main sort of hole in the midfield. Bench one of Rice, Mateta, and Wilson. It's probably going to be Rice from those three. Bench Thiago or Wilson. I'd still start Thiago, but there is a chance he does miss out. I think he will be available, though. Good to see you, Harrison. Visca says, must I keep Mateta? You don't have to, but I would recommend it in certain situations. He's actually ranked quite highly in my Campsy list this week, but yeah, for example, keeping Mateta now and then selling to Bowen in Gameweek 18 looks quite appealing. Hello, Dylan. Would you bench Saka, Bruno Fernandes, Jimenez, or Thiago for Semenyo? Probably Jimenez in this case. Should I free hit? Says Ian. I have Ndai, Thiago, Szoboszlai, and Welbeck all flagged. Ndai is a long-term problem for you for the next month or so because he's off to the African Cup of Nations. Thiago, it's a knock. I think he'll start personally, but of course there are some doubts. Szoboszlai has also been in training. I think he's in a much better position now, so there is a chance he features. I don't think Danny Welbeck starts, though. I think it could be Jorginho Rutt up front for Brighton. So, yeah, you could free hit with that situation. You've got multiple flags. You can go in different areas, but I'd still be tempted to go for Thiago on the free hit personally, but of course it is risky. I think it's a good time to use it. Just bear in mind that Ndai will still be a problem for you in Gameweek 18 and beyond. Start DCL or Richards. I'd start Calvert-Lewin. But he is such a troll, and he has returned in 4 consecutive games. Very streaky player, but he can also go in multiple games without scoring. Best defender for Gameweek 17. Probably O'Reilly. I think a City defender would stand out to me, and they are top of the clean sheet odds. Anderson or Wilson? I'd definitely start Wilson, for sure. Much higher ceiling. Good afternoon, Dylan. How are you doing, buddy? Yeah, all good. What about you? Hopefully you are doing well. Vidani says start 2, Mateta, Thiago, O'Reilly, Calafiori, Van Heck. Mateta and Thiago. But I'd still find a way to sneak in O'Reilly in there. ZX Trenick says, yo, Dylan, bench 1, Thiago, Raul, or Elliot Anderson. Probably Elliot Anderson in this case. Harrison James says, midfield of Saka, Captain, Foden, Rogers, and Wilson came through big for me last week. That's a very solid midfield, and Rogers has been quite inconsistent this season, but when he does return, it typically is a big one, like a 15-pointer against Leeds, and we saw it against West Ham last week as well, so that's very impressive. Shada, Tavernier, or Ekitike, which one on a free hit? Ekitike. Not a fan of Ekitike because of his minutes risk. Yeah, I understand that. I was also looking at it, but I think with Salah out of the picture as well, and also Isak, I think he'll get some game time, to be fair. But yeah, I've gone for the jugular here, if you will. And this could also be a mistake because then essentially my 5th midfielder is Potts, and that's not someone I really want to start. So I'd maybe go to a back 4 in certain game weeks. We'll see how it goes, of course, but I think my main concern is going from 5 free transfers to 2. So I've gone really aggressive, or in this case, I've got 1, and I'll have 2 free transfers next week. So I wildcarded last week, and I used a lot of transfers this week. It's not something I'd recommend, but I've gone for something a bit aggressive, and yeah, ultimately my advice always to people is to give your picks and your transfers time, especially on a wildcard. You don't want to keep chopping and changing every week, but I think when you're in a position where you have so many free transfers, you can be tempted to just make incremental upgrades here and there, or buy a player that you're really confident about, and Ekitike is one of them for the next 3 game weeks for me. Will Welbeck play? I don't think he'll start. So yeah, easy. You'll see my top 10 captains overall, and you're going to see some differentials in there, and players that are not that obvious, so not Erling Haaland. Who to remove for O'Reilly, Anderson, Richards, or Timber? Kindly make a case for the ones you won't remove. So from those 4 players... Oh, okay, so you want to get O'Reilly, and then one of Anderson, Richards, or Timber have to go. Well, I'll be honest with you, long term, I'd rather sell Anderson. The next 2 fixtures look good, but Fulham aren't guaranteed a clean sheet against Forest or West Ham. I think Richards or any Crystal Palace defender is decent beyond the next couple of weeks as well. They're kind of a set and forget. And Timber is arguably the best defender in the game until Munoz and Gabriel are back from injury. So I wouldn't sell Timber. And Arsenal still have the best defence despite some recent deficiencies and a drop-off in their performances. But yeah, it would be Anderson out for me if you're looking a bit longer term. Buy Tavernier or Bino to replace Enzo Fernandez. Not a big fan of either, but probably Tavernier. Should I triple captain Haaland or Foden? I'd go for Haaland personally, but Foden is a great alternative. 4 consecutive double-digit hauls is nothing to be sniffed at. Ahmed says, good morning. I did go for your question, Ahmed. I'm not going to lie to you. I will bench boost any advice or changes I should make. I thought earlier you said another chip. Maybe I read it wrong. Yeah, you said wildcard earlier. Now you're bench boosting. So, yeah. With the bench boost, it makes sense to have this sort of setup. I'm not sure if you actually have the wildcard available to then use in Game Week 18 or 19, but if you have any chips remaining, use them before the Game Week 19 deadline. I like Fernandez, but in terms of the bench boost this week and the timing, you could maybe save that Fernandez transfer for 18 or 19 instead. So you don't need to buy him now against Villa away. I don't know what money you've got in the bank, though. That makes this a bit difficult to really optimize. But yeah, I'd mainly be looking at your defensive line and possibly Kevin Schade as the players to improve on. The rest I'm quite happy with. Likewise, John Paul, season's greetings. Hope the channel continues to grow in 2026 and beyond. Thank you very much. Wilson and Semenyo for Ouattara and Mbeumo on a -4. Yes, I would do that. Good transfers in. I think Semenyo has a high ceiling this week against Burnley, and Wilson has been in incredible form. I think it's worth the hit. Braden says, does it make sense to sell Burn to O'Reilly in order to play him over Anderson, or roll and look to other defenders in Game Week 18? I was in a similar position. I ended up buying O'Reilly and benching Cash. I'd probably say yes, and I'm not even that confident of Fulham or Anderson really delivering when it comes to clean sheets and points amongst defenders, so I'm quite happy with that. Terry says, Rogers, Schade, Tavernier, or Ekitike. Which one should I have on my free hit starting 11? Yeah, it's between Rogers and Ekitike for me, but they're all solid choices. I mean, people were mentioning Tavernier quite a lot, and I think the Burnley fixture has a big part to play. On the free hit, that makes a lot of sense, of course, but yeah, I think it's still going to be Semenyo and Senesi to cover Bournemouth for me. Maybe a punt on Evanosson, but that's obviously a little bit less secure. So I think it would be Rodgers for me out of those players, and Ekitike does look appealing against Tottenham. Thank you, Ellis, but I wildcarded last week and I used so many transfers this week. So yeah, I think the ideal scenario from now on is just to roll and be quite cautious with my transfers, but we'll see, because FPL can always throw you curveballs. Best replacement for Anderson up to 6.4 million, or should I just keep him? I'd say just keep him for now. My team says Ellis, Kelleher, Calafiori, Richards, Van Dijk, Saka, Bruno, Foden, Anderson, Wilson, Thiago, Haaland captain. Looks solid. And as long as you've got a decent bench option just in case, so in this case, you know, for this week you got Thiago yellow flagged, and in the future you might have other injuries or suspensions pop up, then that's where having a decent bench can also come in very handy. Is it fine to bench boost with Mark Guiu? Depends on the rest of your squad. But yeah, if you're confident in the other 14 players, then it could still work. Using triple captain this week, having trouble deciding vice captain. It's between Foden, Saka, Bruno. While my top 10 Campsy list will provide insight into how I feel about this with the exact rankings, but I do rank Foden higher than the others. My general advice, though, to people, and currently I've got Foden vice captain, but I usually go for different captain and vice captains in terms of the same match or team, because you might get some really weird situation where a game is postponed because of weather or something else like we've seen over the last couple of years. And as a result, you captain and vice captain a player from a certain game, the game is cancelled, and then you've got no captain. So that's why it typically is safer to look a bit outside of that. And if you want to play it safe, I'd vice captain Saka, but I think Foden is a better option in isolation for Gameweek 17. Thank you, Harrison James. Likewise to you. Hope the holidays have been treating you well. Benching dilemma for me this week is Joachim Andersen or Cash. I've currently gone for Joachim Andersen in my starting 11. And I would start Thiago over Minter. Yeah, I think so. Giyu won't get more than 1 point. I agree. But depends once again in terms of the context of that player and also the bench boost, which other options they have in their 15-man squad. Thank you, Danny. I appreciate it. Good luck to you as well. Would you do Chalobah to O'Reilly? I have Timber, Anderson, Vandenberg, and Chow. I probably would, because Chelsea's short-term fixtures aren't great, and O'Reilly has West Ham this week. You've got a bit of attacking threat in there. Not much in terms of DEFCON, but it is worth noting that Chalobah is the highest scoring defender in FPL this season, which is crazy. And I think he could still do fairly decent, as we saw against Bournemouth, with bonus points as well. So it's not like a must-have. You don't have to do this transfer, but I'd be tempted. And I think O'Reilly is a good option. L. Andre says, current midfield of Saka, Foden, Bruno, Minter and Dewsbury Hall with 0.3 in the bank, looking to replace Minter and Hall. Any suggestions? Well, Minter to Wilson would be appealing. And I haven't done the exact maths, but you could also afford Elliot Anderson, if I'm not mistaken. So buying those two would actually fix your midfield quite a lot. Dylan, I can't get to Saka and Bruno this week. Which one to choose? For this week specifically, I prefer Saka. But I'll be honest with you, I think long-term Bruno Fernandes is the better pick. He's cheaper. There's no risk of rotation whatsoever. He's on penalties, and while Saka is the main penalty taker for Arsenal, you've got Gyökeres and Odegaard as well, who can share them. And I also think United have some decent fixtures. I think with Arsenal, it's a bit mixed bag still. Long term, it's a different story, and they're top of the FDR until February, essentially. But yeah, I think Bruno Fernandes is still the better pick long term. Thoughts on Vifa as a 7th, 8th attacking option? I'm not really feeling it, to be fair. He mainly plays as a right back. He doesn't get many goals or assists. DEFCON, that's something he can provide, but it's not really something I'd be targeting. Would you bench boost with Thiago, Tavernier, Vandenberg and Dubravka on the bench? Well, if you've got Thiago on the bench, and yes, he is yellow flagged, I'm wondering who you've started over him, but that's a decent bench for sure. I think Thiago and Tavernier would be the ones who could carry that bench boost. I'm not sure, Zero. Hopefully tonight, but yeah, it's just over the last couple of weeks, haven't been able to do some reaction streams. But whenever I am able to, I always provide with those, and also haven't missed a single deadline stream for FPL and UCL Fantasy for the past 5 years, essentially. So yeah, I'll try my best. Thank you to the moderators as well for just dealing with spammers. Just be patient. Yeah, I'm going through every single question, so there's no need to spam. RYG457 says 2 free transfers, 0.4 in the bank. Should I sell Enzo to someone? I already have Bruno, Foden, Saka, Elliot Anderson. Start Enzo or not? Yeah, Enzo against Newcastle is an interesting one. Difficult fixture on paper, but Chelsea could still score a goal or two. So 0.4 in the bank. And Enzo Fernandez, I'm not sure if the price decrease happened overnight, but yeah, he was 6.6. He might have even gone down to 6.5 now. I think I would be tempted to sell him. And whilst I like Bruno Guimaraes, he's 1 yellow card away from suspension. It's the same match as well. Newcastle, Chelsea, depends on which team you're backing a little bit more. Enzo will offer more attacking threat from open play. So it's a question of timing. I think for now I would keep Enzo, but I would kind of, from your midfielders, he's the one I would look at to maybe improve on. So I definitely agree with you on that one. Maybe Wilson, which is very template at this point, but I think Enzo to Wilson could also work fairly well. I'll try to, Wei-Sing. I'll try to. Yeah, just give me a second. Okay. Okay, so after going through this team, I'm going to go through some different screens. Okay, so you sent in 2, right? Yeah, I'm guessing, yeah, I see Mark Guiu in the starting 11 for one of them. You would start O'Reilly over him. I'm not a big fan of like doubling up on Palace defensively against Leeds. Maybe you're onto something, and if you back Crystal Palace to keep a clean sheet, then always back your gut. But yeah, I think this week is a bit awkward when it comes to clean sheets. I think Man City and Arsenal are the most likely. Apart from that, I don't really have confidence in many of the others, but you might want to consider Joachim Andersen for this week only. Fulham are in the top 6 for the clean sheet odds. Palmer in there is interesting. I do prefer Saka against Everton away, but that is certainly debatable. So, yeah, I think Foden, Haaland and O'Reilly are quite standard. They speak for themselves. I'm also going to go for like a free hit team very soon, actually, so you can compare your drafts to that one. But Semenyo looks good. I think even Senesi could be quite decent in the defensive line instead of going for Gay, Lacroix and Klein. Double Arsenal defense is interesting. I think that could work as well, but yeah, I think you've got some promise in this free hit team, but I would make a few changes. I'm going to show you using FPL.team very soon what I would go for actually. So let's go to the FDR first. And by the way, if you haven't done so already, like, subscribe, hit the hype button, the notification bell, all that good stuff. It is genuinely appreciated. So let's go to the FDR first and foremost. Newcastle are top until Game Week 22. Liverpool are second. Everton, Brentford, and Man United are in the top 5. And City are just missing out on that sort of upper echelon there. For the bottom 5, Chelsea, Forest, Burnley, Arsenal, and Aston Villa, these FDRs, or this FDR, does change very, very quickly. With predicted points, Haaland is top. And if we actually look until Game Week 22 specifically, yes, he is still top. Nothing changes there, of course. Foden, Fernandes, Cunha, Saka, Rice, Ekitike, Semenyo, O'Reilly, and Palmer are in the top 10. With projected price changes, we could see Semenyo, Bruno Fernandes, Rodgers, Bowen, Mark Guiu, Gay, and Cherky rise. And in terms of price falls, Dan Burn, Welbeck, Sells, Johnston, Menetzi, and some other players like Elanga, Rodon. And yeah, I think I've seen so many like projected price changes over the last couple of days. Some of them haven't happened yet. So just bear that in mind when you see the predicted lineups fairly soon. And these are the stats of 2 of the best forwards to buy right now in Ekitike and Bowen. And to be fair, in terms of timing, with Bowen, you'd rather buy him in Game Week 18, for example. So ignore the fixtures, what you see on the bottom. But when it comes to their stats, Ekitike does have 5 goals to Bowen's 4. They both have the same number of goal contributions. And their game time is similar, but Bowen obviously will have the advantage with more minutes, less rotation. When it comes to shots as well, Bowen has 40 and 16 on target, whilst Ekitike only has 23 shots and 7 on target. Bowen also leads when it comes to shots in the box, but in terms of the quality of chances, that's where Ekitike does have the advantage, with the XG being 3.31 and 6 big chances to Bowen's 2. And with creativity, Bowen does win in those metrics as well. So I think with Jared Bowen, I was very tempted to buy him. He might even still make his way into my team at some point, but with Ekitike, I do prefer his fixture this week against Tottenham away, and we'll see how things go in the end. But I think their stats in general are quite poor compared to Thiago and Mateta, to name 2 examples. So FPL.team is a great website here to visualize future game weeks, and this was essentially what I talked about in the wildcard video. But what about the free hit? And that's where this team would come into play. So I believe I'd go for Raya in goal. So I agree with Wei saying on that one. And I did have a free hit team built already from a few days ago. So I'm going to go here for Senesi. And we can also cheap out the bench. So it could be King, it could be Potts, it really doesn't matter. We can go for Potts to get a bit more money. Dubravka would stay in there. I think Jimenez would make way. Antoine Semenyo would also be in this team. And the same goes for Nico O'Reilly. So let's bring in O'Reilly here. And I would get rid of Bruno Fernandes, personally. Okay. So I would go for Wilson as well. Let's bring him in. I think I would keep Saka too. And something I actually considered, which might be unpopular, is going for Jean-Philippe Mateta. Then, to have a decent option on the bench, we can go for Van Heck. It can be any sort of cheap defender. And there's plenty of money in the bank after building this sort of structure. Now, if you are quite bullish on the Arsenal defence, you could go for Hincapie instead of Joachim Andersen. And then I've got roughly 1.1 million in the bank. I would go for something like this on the free hit. It's still open to interpretation. Even downgrading Mateta to a cheaper forward and then going for 5 midfielders is also on the cards. But I'd certainly triple up on City, and this is the best triple up in my opinion. I think 2, maybe 3 Arsenal players also looks good. And with Bournemouth as well. People were mentioning Tavernier. Ivanosen up front could also be interesting. Petrovic in goal, but definitely Semenyo and Senesi are the standouts. They are the most template picks as well. And from Fulham, I think Wilson is the go-to player. Watch him in a score, by the way. I just know it's going to happen after I sold him this week. Joachim Andersen to cover their defence is also decent, but this is roughly what I'd go for. Definitely don't captain Thiago. It would be Erling Haaland. And to go safe, you can vice-captain Saka, but I would consider Phil Foden as well if you aren't really too shook about having a captain and vice-captain from the same match. With FPL Challenge, this week it's called Home for the Holidays, so you get double points for players with home fixtures. I've gone for Raya in goal, Van Heck as my only defender, Semenyo, Rodgers and Wilson with Haaland as my captain. You can only pick one player per club, you have an unlimited budget, and there are 6 options to choose from with 5 outfield players. So I might end up changing Van Heck and Raya, but the rest I'm fairly happy with, and I'll go back to this after the deadline has passed. I'm also going to show you briefly my team selection graphics, and you'll see how I did in Game Week 16 on the wildcard and the mistakes I made, and also a few good things about the week, and that includes Robert Sanchez, who has been very solid for me this season, but the defensive line was horrendous. Hincapie was okay, the others not so much. Foden and Fernandes carried my midfield. Well, to be fair, Saka also did a great job, but Bruno Guimaraes has been disappointing, and captaining Thiago was a massive mistake. But even if I had captained Haaland, I believe it would have still been a small red arrow, but obviously it would be a much better position to be in. And I've now got 2 red flag players from the wildcard, Dan Burn, who was already in my team, and Dewsbury Hall. So yeah, a bit of misfortune as well to already have to use essentially some transfers, and that's why I ended up making 4 moves going into Game Week 17, and you're going to see some of them in the next section. So this also kind of shows you the original plans I had, and I was considering Calvert-Lewin up front for Raul Jimenez, Justifondo Riley in for Dan Burn. And Dewsbury Hall to Wilson happened early in the week when Wilson was still 5.5 million, and O'Reilly is in my team as well now. That is confirmed. But Jimenez to Calvert-Lewin was not the transfer I made up front. Instead, I've gone for Hugo Ekitike, and that required downgrading Bruno Guimaraes to Potts, a 4.4 million midfielder from West Ham. So this team is identical to what I've got right now, with one major change, of course, in the forward line. Instead of Calvert-Lewin, it is Ekitike, who is a minute's risk. That could be a concern, but as things stand, yeah, I think he's in great form. And if he can just get enough minutes, 60 plus in most of these matches, I'm quite confident he can produce the goods. All the expected points as well have been updated, and Igor Thiago is now much lower at 4.1. When it comes to the scoreline predictions, I've gone for Newcastle 2, Chelsea 1 in the early kickoff, Bournemouth 2, Burnley 0, Brighton 1, Sunderland 1, Man City 4, West Ham 0, Wolves 2, Brentford 2, Tottenham 1, Liverpool 3, Everton 1, Arsenal 1, Leeds 1, Crystal Palace 2, Aston Villa 1, Man United 0, and Fulham 1, Nottingham Forest 1. So next up will be the team weakness and the heat map, and last time out I recommended Palmer, and he did fairly well. Despite only playing 57 minutes against Everton, he scored, and it was a comfortable win for Chelsea. If Igor Thiago is available, I would back him to do very well against Wolves, and he might give me the sort of return I was looking for last week when I captained him. With the clean sheet odds, there have been no changes to the wildcard video I posted a few days ago. Man City are top, and Arsenal are just behind, with a 47% chance against Everton away. Bournemouth, Brighton, Brentford and Fulham complete the top 6, and West Ham remain bottom with a 10% chance of keeping a clean sheet at the Etihad. And when it comes to the top 10 captains, this is where things get very interesting, and there are some differentials, so to speak, in there. Wilson is 10th, Palmer, Fernandes, Ekitike and Mateta just miss out on the top 5, which comprise of Saka, Semenyo, the doubtful Igor Thiago, who I think will start, Phil Foden is 2nd, and Erling Haaland is definitely top. If you have the triple captain, I would use it now against West Ham at home. So, before I go back to your questions, let's go through the lineups, and this is where there's a lot to discuss. With Arsenal, Raya would be in goal, Timber, Saliba, Hincapié and Calafiori, who is now back from suspension, Zubimendi, Odegaard and Rice. I think Trossard could start, but there is also the possibility of Martinelli or Eze on the left. I think Gyökeres will start up front. Of course, Marino is knocking on the door, and Bukayo Saka will definitely start on the right-hand side. Moving on to Aston Villa, Emi Martinez remains doubtful, but Unai Emery seemed much more positive about his involvement against Man United this weekend. Cash, Concert, Lindelof and Maatsen will be the back 4, and Cash is 1 yellow card away from suspension. Kamara and Onana in the midfield, with Tielemans a bit further forward, McGinn and Rodgers on the wings, and Watkins up front. Bournemouth will go for Petrovic, Smith, Diakite, Senesi and Troffa in my opinion, with Scott and Tavernier as Adams has picked up an injury, Brooks and Semenyo on the wings, and Kluivert just behind Evanilson. We're now on to Brentford, and Igor Thiago is doubtful, but I think he'll start. Kelleher, Coyote, Collins, Vandenberg and Hickey, Jensen and Yarmoliuk as Henderson is doubtful. Schade could be shifted to the right, and that allows Lewis Potter to play further forward in the absence of Danga Ouattara, as he has gone off to the African Cup of Nations, and Damsgaard would be just behind Igor Thiago. Brighton will likely go for Verbruggen, Wiefer, Van Heck and Boscagli as Dunk is injured, Kadioglu on the left, and Mitoma is now back. It has been a while since he has featured, and he could start on the left-hand side. Ayari and Hinshelwood in the midfield is almost a certainty, with Ayari returning from injury, and Baliba is off to the African Cup of Nations, but not Minter. He will stay with Brighton throughout this period, and Gruder will likely play just behind Jorginho Rota in the potential absence of Danny Welbeck. Burnley will go for Dubravka, Walker, Ekdal, Esteve and Hartman, so both Perez and Walker are now back from suspension. Cullen and Florentino Luis in the midfield, Ogachuku a bit further forward, Bryn Larson and Anthony on the wings, and Broja up front, but Fleming, of course, has been fairly decent. Chelsea could also go for this sort of lineup with Sanchez, Gusto, Fofana, Chalobah and Cucurella, James and also Caicedo, who has just returned from suspension, and this could allow Palmer, Enzo Fernandez, Neto and Joao Pedro as the front 4, and Delap is injured for a couple of weeks. It seems like Oliver Glasner revealed his starting 11 in yesterday's press conference, with Dean Henderson, Richards, Lacroix and Gay, Wharton and Hughes, as Kamada is going to be out for some time now, Mitchell and Klein as the wingbacks, Nketiah, Yeremy Pino and Mateta. Ismail Assar is close to returning from injury, but he is off to the African Cup of Nations with Senegal. Moving on to Everton, Pickford, O'Brien, Tarkowski, Keane and Mikalenko is likely, with Irigbonen and Garner in the midfield. McNeil, Alcaraz, Grealish, and Tieno Barry. So Grealish is fit, according to David Moyes, but Ndai and Idrissa Gana Gueye are off to the African Cup of Nations, and Jared Branthwaite is still injured, and Dewsbury Hall does miss out as well, but it's only going to be a short-term problem. With Fulham, Leno, Tete, Anderson, Cuenca to replace the AFCON-bound Bassi, Robinson as the left-back, Sandenberg and Lukic, who is yellow flagged, so bear that in mind. Wilson, Smith-Rowe, Kevin and Raul Jimenez. That's what Fulham will likely go for. We're now on to Leeds with Perry, Bogle, Rodon, Biol, Strauch and Goodmanson, Tanaka, Ampadu, Stack, Calvert-Lewin and Okafor after a decent run of results from Daniel Farke's men. Salah's off to AFCON, and Liverpool will start Szoboszlai in his absence, who is yellow flagged at the moment, but he has made good strides this week. Alisson in goal, Bradley, Kanate, Van Dijk and Kirkes, Gravenberch, Jones, McAllister, Wirtz and Ekitike would complete the starting 11. And Man City have really ramped up the pressure in the last couple of weeks, and they're putting in some great performances and results. I think Donnarumma, Nunes, Ruben Dias-Cavadio, O'Reilly, Gonzalez, Bernardo Silva, Cherki, Reinders, Foden and Haaland will start, as Jeremy Doku is out injured. On the other side of Manchester, there is United with Lamens, Yoro, Heaven, Shaw, Mainu, Fernandez, Dorgu and Dallo, Cunha, Mount and Sesko. Of course, with United, they are probably the most heavily impacted team because of AFCON. No Mazraoui, Mbuma or Amad Diallo, and the likes of Casemiro and De Ligt are out through injury. The same goes for Harry Maguire. Newcastle are decimated at the back due to injury, and whilst Livramento, well, it seems like he's going to be out for a couple of weeks to be fair, Lewis Hall could be available, and I think the biggest boost will be Nick Pope, who is very close to returning, but I still think Ramsdale will start in goal as things stand, and they could start Lewis Miley as the right back, and that allows Joelinton to re-enter the starting 11. The centre-back partnership will be Cher and Chow. Tonali and Bruno Guimaraes are nailed on at this moment in time, and it's between Jacob Murphy or Elanga on the right, but I think Gordon will start on the left, and even Visser is also knocking on the door, but I've gone for Voltemada to start up front. Nottingham Forest could start John again in the absence of Sells, who is recovering from a groin injury, Savona, Milenkovic, Murillo and Williams, Anderson and Douglas Luiz to replace Sangare, who is off to the African Cup of Nations, Hutchinson and Hudson-Odoi, Gibbs White and Igor Jesus. We're now on to the last couple of teams, and Sunderland could play a back five again, but they've also shifted it around sometimes to a back four. So Rufus in goal, Mukiele, Hertrauda, Ballard, Alderete and Hume, Dingra, Xhaka, Rigg, Lefay and Brobby. They also have a few players missing due to the African Cup of Nations. Vicario, Borro, Romero, Van der Ven and Spence will be the likely backline for Tottenham Hotspur, with João Paulinho and Bentancur in the midfield, Kudus, Xavi Simons, Colomwani and Richarlison. West Ham could play a back five this week, or a back three, depending on how you look at it. Areola, Mavropanos, Igor Julio, Todibo, Walker-Peters and Skulls, and obviously Wan-Bissaka is off to the African Cup of Nations. Magassa could start alongside Potts in the midfield, with Paqueta and Fernandez as almost inside forwards, and Jarrod Bowen would play as the lone striker. And finally, we have Wolves with Johnston, Doherty, Krejci and Totti Gomez, Joao Gomez and Andre, Chichawa and Wolf, Arias, Hwang Hee-chan and Strand Larsen, and Agbadu is going to be unavailable for the next couple of games because of the African Cup of Nations, and that kind of wraps it up for everybody. It is worth bearing in mind with Sunderland that Diarra, he's going to be in the squad before leaving with Senegal. So we could even see him start, but I think he'll be on the bench, to be quite honest with you. So drop a like, subscribe, hit the notification bell. All of your support is massively appreciated. Let's get the stream to over 100 likes and close in on new goals like 38k on YouTube. And I will be answering your questions for the remainder of the stream. We've got at least over an hour left until the deadline, and we could even go beyond that if we hit a super chat goal and keep the conversation going. Who should I remove for O'Reilly? In isolation, the worst option is probably Mukiele, but he is 4.2 million, and I think a lot of us would like to have that sort of cheap option at 4 to 4.2 million, and from a budget perspective, that would make a lot of sense. So it's a difficult one. I'd certainly keep Timber and Van Dijk. I know they're the most expensive, but I think they're reliable options throughout the Christmas period. So to get O'Reilly in, at this moment in time, I would consider selling Mukiele, but just bear in mind that you might want a budget defender in the future again. I got in Raul Jimenez, really regretting it now. Yeah, so did I, which is why I pulled the trigger, but he's probably going to score this time. Yeah, let me know what you think, Easy. Obviously, you posted this comment earlier, but yeah, I'm curious to see your thoughts as well. Hi, I need a replacement for Dewsbury Hall, but I only have 5.1 million. Feel like V4 or Pot seem like my only options. Do you have any other speculative picks in mind? I'll be honest with you. In this situation, I just keep Dewsbury Hall because he's not going to be out for long, according to David Moyes. He will miss the Arsenal game, but you're probably going to bench him for that anyway. So I made the move to Harry Wilson just to kind of chase that higher ceiling and maybe in a way sort of navigate team value and build up some profits, if you will. But at 5.1 and below, it's not really worth it. I only went for Pots in my case to fund Ekatike. So that could work, but in terms of replacing Dewsbury Hall and finding a better option, I don't think there is one at 5.1 or below, and he could be back by Gameweek 18 or 19, so my advice is to hold Dewsbury Hall. Start 2, Mateta, Wilson, Anderson, says Leo. I'd start Mateta and Wilson. 2 games to finish the first half of FPL. Yes, time does fly, right? Yeah, Rye is still a hold for sure. What percentage do you think that Thiago starts against Wolves? 70%. Triple captain Haaland or Bruno in 19? Haaland right now, yeah. Thank you, Harrison James. I appreciate it. Sell Van Dijk to O'Reilly. Van Dijk has 2 good fixtures next, though. I'd keep Van Dijk as much as I like O'Reilly. Hey, Dylan, how you doing? All good, Ian. What about you? Thiago or Calvert-Lewin? Thiago. Bowen or Marlon? I'd just pick Bowen and start him long term. If you've got both of them and you have to pick one this week, well, I think Marlon will be a impact sub. But yeah, it's still going to be Bowen for me. Jar says Petrovic, Dubravka, Stev, Reece James, Anderson, Rodon, Chow, Saka, Semenyo, Bruno, Sarr, Dewsbury Hall, Thiago, Mateta, Haaland, 5 free transfers, bench boost, wildcard left. What transfers and strategy can you suggest, please? Okay, so that's a very unique situation. Yeah, I think what I'd probably do, if you're happy with your squad right now, as it is, I'll be honest, I think the more I look at it, what I just do is wildcard now, bench boost an A-team, and then using 5 free transfers. I think that's the way to go about it. You can start taking some money off the bench, but you don't need to use all of the transfers. You can still have, let's say, 2 or 3 transfers available after using both the wildcard and bench boost and be in a strong position for the second half of the season. So that's what I would do, mate. I would wildcard now, bench boost an 18, and use a few transfers to take some money off the bench potentially and spread the funds around and get the players you really want for 2026. I think that's the best way to approach it. Yeah, thank you, Punjabi. You beat me to it. Yeah, I don't know what's happening there. I literally just went through my predicted lineups, and I've said multiple times what I think about Welbeck. I don't think he'll start. Okay, so let's go through the other questions. We've got quite a lot to go through. And yeah, Zawali says, subscribe to the channel and like the stream. Massively appreciated. And thank you very much for the reminder. How long until Foden hits 10 million price tag? I don't think he'll hit 10 million, but 9 million is very, very close, to be fair. Morning, Dylan, making a big move. Triple captain on Semenyo. Well, it's something different. I hope it goes well for you. And I think Semenyo is a good option for the captaincy. He was in my top 4, actually. Good to see you, Noor. Captain Dylan, what's your insight on the best 6.3 million forward? I'm replacing Krupi Jr. and I have Haaland and Thiago. Based on current form, is Calvert-Lewin, dare I say. Jimenez is also an option for you, but very inconsistent. The underlying numbers are poor. I literally went for him as a free Gameweek punt, but yeah, picking him over Wilson has backfired massively as well. So there were a few things on the wild card. Yeah, I think Wilson would be the biggest regret as well, actually, to answer Easy's question from the beginning of the stream. But yeah, I think it's probably Calvert-Lewin on current form. Start two of Van Dijk, Minter, Richards, or Joachim Andersen. I would start Minter and probably Joachim Andersen. Hey Dylan, best 5 million midfielder. There's not really many at 5 million or below. So one of Potts or Miley could do the trick. They both cost 4.4. They're going to start in Game Week 17, in my opinion, and get plenty of game time this season, but they're just going to be a fifth midfielder, eighth attacker, if you will, third on the bench, and you just sometimes switch to a back four if necessary, or you just play your three forwards and the other midfielders. So that's pretty much my answer to that. Dylan, would you sell Dewsbury Hall to a Wilson or Tavernier with one free transfer? Wilson, which is what I did on Monday. Bench boost of Dubravka, Elliot Anderson, Senesi, and Ballard. Looks decent. Nothing spectacular on paper, but I think Senesi and Anderson looks solid enough. Who's the best defender under 4.4? Still Mukiele for me. So the transfers I made this week were Dan Burn to O'Reilly, Dewsbury Hall to Wilson, Raul Jimenez to Ekitike, and Bruno Guimaraes to Potts, which was to fund the other moves. Triple captain Haaland or save it for Bruno in 19? I would just triple captain Haaland now, as I told you earlier. Triple captain Haaland, yeah. Well, maybe it's just different people saying it, to be fair. But yeah, my advice to those with the triple captaincy, and that's your only chip left, use it now on Haaland. Start two, covered. Hello, Dylan. Would you go captain Foden? The triple captain differential. I'm not against that. He's got a decent record against West Ham. Fantastic form with 4 consecutive double-digit hauls. I still prefer Haaland, but I think Foden is the closest to him this week. I have only Timber from Arsenal, goalkeeper and defence. Should I sell Timber to O'Reilly? Money will help me in the next game week transfers. I'd still keep Timber personally, but your situation is unique, and you're saying here that selling Timber to O'Reilly will help you make other moves that you're looking to make in 18. So depending on what those moves are, that could sway my answer, but at the moment I'd say keep Jiren Timber, to be fair. Would you bench Wilson or Thiago? I would bench Wilson still, which is controversial. Good morning to you as well. Hi Dylan, which is the best game week for the first bench boost in your opinion? Very team dependent, but I think game week 18 looks good, especially for those that have the wild card. So my recommendation there would be wild card now, bench boost in 18. But every situation is different, of course, and it ultimately depends on the fixtures of the players you've got, and using FPL.team will help you a lot. But yeah, I think game week 18 would be decent. Akil says current team: Raya, Dubravka, Timber, Joachim Andersen, Gay, Senesi, Alderete, Rice, Bruno, Wilson, Foden, Caicedo, Guiu, Haaland, Thiago. 1 free transfer, 4.3 in the bank. I'd roll from the situation you're in. You don't want to use up... Well, I mean, you've got 1 free transfer left, but you want to go into 18 with 2 or more, ideally. Bruno G out, Cherki in. As a short-term punt, Cherki looks appealing, but I still think Bruno Guimaraes is better in the long term. I only sold him to fund Ekitike and O'Reilly. Hey Dylan, should I do Enzo to Shada or start Elliot Anderson and bench Enzo and roll? I'd probably roll, and to be honest, I'd be tempted or even consider starting Enzo, but that's just my opinion. Should I sell Nick Voltemada for Ekitike, Dylan? I'd say yes, and despite Ekitike having a sort of rotation risk, so does Voltemada now with the return of Vissa. Best defense for 4.2, it's going to be Mukiele still. Cherki plus Foden. For me, I would go for Haaland, obviously, Foden, and then Nico O'Reilly in terms of tripling up on City. But Cherki's a decent option, and it's a differential. It's something to look at, but his minutes are all over the place. And despite the fact he can come off the bench and score or assist quite regularly, I'm not a massive fan. One of the blank and double game weeks after the draw of the semi-final of the Carabao Cup. Well, this was covered in my chip strategy guide and my how to play FPL video, essentially the key changes to the game this season. And after game week 30 is when we're going to get the blanks and doubles, and it's all covered there. I might even show you later on with the chip strategy graphics I've got on screen. Yeah, some things will be out of date, but I'll probably just focus specifically on what you're asking here, the blank and double stuff, and that should still be relatively new and up to date there. Play Van Dijk or Van den Berg? Probably Van Dijk. It's a close one. I mean, look, Wolves away, I get it. I think starting a Brentford defender would make sense on paper, but I just don't trust Brentford defensively. And I actually went for a 2-2 draw there. But yeah, in terms of clean sheet odds and also the quality of opponent, it makes sense to start Van den Berg, and maybe you take a punt on that, but I'm just not really that keen. Bench one among Anderson, Wilson, Van Dijk. Van Dijk this week. Good to see you, Adamak. So Haaland triple captain, bench Dubravka and Mbumo, De Kuiper, Stev, 0 in the bank, free transfers, any changes or roll? Well, Mbumo to Fernandes is my top recommendation, but you don't have to do it now necessarily against Aston Villa away. And you've got nothing in the bank. So in order to make that move possible, you need to make a downgrade elsewhere. So I'm quite conscious of that. And it does become difficult. So you've got no Arsenal defender. You've got Saka in there. But in order to get Fernandes for Mbumo, for example, you would need to downgrade Jimenez to Calvert-Lewin. And even that wouldn't be enough, actually. So it's a bit of a tricky situation you're in. Something I would consider for the future is just downgrading Jimenez to a cheap forward, and it gives you almost 2 million extra in budget. Then you can buy Fernandes from Mbumo, maybe upgrade another player. Particularly, I would say your defensive line, because you've got Goodmanson, who costs 3.8, 3.9 million, and you've got Estev. So I think upgrading one of them would also be a good move in the long term. Would you start Thiago or Welbeck? I'd start Thiago, and I would go for Richards. To have Minter or Brighton defender or keeper in FPL Challenge? Well, I've currently gone for Van Heck, so that's my current answer, but as I mentioned earlier, both Raya and Van Heck could be sold from my FPL Challenge team. I genuinely think Marino will start over Gyökeres. I was thinking that as well. Yeah. Pick 2 to play out of Eze, Welbeck, Anderson, Virgil. My gut is saying Welbeck starts. Well, I get that. I'll be honest. I think Jorginho Rota will get the nod, and Danny Welbeck won't be fit enough to start. Jar says Petrovic, Dubravka, Estev, Reese, Anderson, Rodon, Chow, Saka, Semenyo, Bruno, Sarr, Dewsbury Hall, Thiago, Mateta, Haaland. 5 free transfers, bench boost, wildcard left. What transfers and strategy can you suggest, please? Once again, I'm not sure if it might have been you as well. I think it might be the same person, but I mentioned earlier, wildcard now, bench boost 18, and then use transfers afterwards. And ideally, you don't use all of them, so you've got a good foundation for the second half of the season. Yeah, I think there is a point to keep Jimenez for the next 2, but I'm not a massive fan, and I never have been. So that was a mistake of mine on the wildcard. Yep, Rodgers is better than Watkins, I agree. I just don't think Watkins is really worth talking about until we see some consistency from him. He's not worth that price tag. Dylan, start Hincapié and Calafiori or only one? What's the alternative? That's what I'd be asking. But yeah, Calafiori does offer more attacking threat, but Hincapié is more likely for Defcon. Hey mate, would you rather have Bowen or Ekitike from 18 onwards? Cheers. Difficult. I think it's very, very close. I'd lean towards Ekitike, but only just. And that was one of my biggest dilemmas this week. And if I went for Bowen, I would have been able to go for Anderson instead of Potts, which looks much better. There's not really an update on Welbeck that I've provided. So in terms of like the official quote by Ursula, this is what he said on Welbeck. There's uncertainty about his ability to start the upcoming game, but definitely the issue is not healed yet, and he is still restricted during the training week. The team has a strong leadership group who could potentially step up as captain if Danny is unavailable. So yeah, based on that quote, it's not looking too promising. I think Jorginho Rota will start front for Brighton, which I showed you earlier in the predicted lineup section. Who is the best Docker replacement? Depends what budget we're talking about, but Wilson could work short term for sure. I know some would point towards Cherky, Tavernier, and that makes sense, but yeah, I think Wilson would be the one. Which 2 in the squad from 4? I would say Jimenez and probably Anderson. Thank you, Anish, for the super chat. I appreciate it. Hey Dylan, Roofs, Timber, Van Dijk, Richards, Saka, Wilson, Semenyo, Foden, Haaland, Thiago Ekitike, with Dubravka, Chalobah, Anderson, Dewsbury Hall on the bench. So how many transfers do you have, and what's the budget? But in terms of what I think of what you actually got, yeah, pretty solid. I think the midfield's the strongest part of the team this week. The only sort of hole is Bruno Fernandes. That's something I'd recommend more so for Gameweek 18 and beyond. Defensive line looks good for now. You don't need to change it. And if Thiago does miss out, you have Chalobah first on the bench, which is decent. I'd maybe consider putting Anderson above Chalobah in the pecking order for the bench. But yeah, in terms of long-term, Fernandes is the main player that I think you're missing. But for this week, it's looking very solid. Start Ramsdale or Dubravka? That's a close one. I'd lean towards Aaron Ramsdale. Timber or Pedro Neto, start one. Timber. Hi Dylan, bench one of Gay, Richards, Hincapié, Calafiori, Cherky, Wilson, Bruno Fernandes, Semenyo, Mateta, Haaland. Come on. There's surely no way you're thinking of benching Haaland this week. For Thiago, I would bench a defender. And you got double Palace, double Arsenal defence. Yeah, it's going to be one of those players. Probably Richards on the bench. Start Voltemada, Thiago, or De Kuyper? Thiago. Sead puts his team, free transfer 0.6 in the bank. How to proceed? Yeah, a lot of people are in a similar position with 3 or 4 transfers, so I get it. I think Mbeumo is the main player to sell, and the rest you can keep for now. But, of course, there's Voltemada as well that you might be a bit unsure about. So, yeah, Mbeumo would be the first priority to sell, and with 0.6, you can't go to Bruno Fernandes, but that is my main recommendation long term. So what I'd probably do, let's see. I would consider Eze over the coming weeks downgraded to a cheaper midfielder. You still got Reinders in there, which I don't like, to be honest, but if you want to have enough funds to do something like Voltemada to... Well, to be fair, you could actually just do Voltemada to Bowen. I'd do that in 18 and just focus on selling Mbeumo, and he could become Semenyo. I'd do that this week. Mbeumo to Semenyo, and next week Voltemada to Bowen. Can I do it like this? 5 transfers plus bench boost this week and wildcard 18-19, or bench boost 18 and use wildcard now and the free transfers later? Of course, there are different ways you can go about it, but if you do use your 5 free transfers now, I mean, yes, look, you're going to wildcard anyway, so you'll probably be happy with the team you've got going into 2026. But having said that, you might be a bit limited in terms of the moves you could make after the wildcard, which you might need to make anyway out of necessity because of injury, suspensions, and rotation. But yeah, I think it does become maybe more complicated, even though you technically have fewer options in terms of when to use the bench boost and the wildcard. But in terms of the order, the sequence, that's what's going to be crucial. And I'm still going to stick with my original answer, but you've got to back your gut on that one, because maybe you've got some plans in mind which will allow you to have a better team for 18 and 17, and then you have a very solid team long-term with the wildcard chip. So it just really depends how you want to approach it. Start 3, Enzo, Anderson, Joachim Anderson, and Richards. The one player I'd bench from those 4 is probably going to be Elliot Anderson. Hi Dylan, should I transfer Thiago for Ekitike? I wouldn't do that. Yeah, using wildcard in 18, that's fair. Definitely use it before Gameweek 19, as mentioned before. Thorson, Eze, and Gyökeres have both in the team. Not a massive fan, especially of Gyökeres. I think Eze has his moments. We saw that against Palace and Tottenham Hotspur, but yeah, with Gyökeres, I would have some big concerns there. I think he's the one to sell, and you can go to Ekitike or Bowen. Hey Dylan, start Richards or Anderson, and start Wilson or Anderson. I would start Joachim Anderson and Wilson. Good morning, Dylan. In Boomer to Saka for a -4 before the deadline or play Goodmanson? I take the hit and go to Saka. Bench one of Rice, Mateta and Wilson. Rice. Hi, Dylan. Keeper to have now. Not Raya, not enough funds. Robert Sanchez. Not great fixtures short term, but I think going into 2026, yeah, I think Sanchez is decent. What's really wrong with Raul? Well, he's just not consistent. I think the last time he was during his time at Wolves. He can be a streaky player, but he is a budget player for a reason. Let's put it that way. So Anish says 1 free transfer, 0.6 million. Interesting. But that's what I mean. I just wouldn't make another transfer here and try to go into Gameweek 18 with at least 2 available moves. But moving forwards, yeah, Bruno Fernandes in the midfield is what I'd recommend. In order to make that happen, that's where you could do something like Dewsbury Hall to Potts or just a 4.4 million midfielder. And also Chalobah downgraded to a cheaper option. Now, you are selling the high scoring defender in the game, so that's not going to be ideal. But that is going to be your best route to getting Bruno Fernandes, which is, in my opinion, the main player that you're missing out on during the Christmas period. Heated Gaming says, any recommendations? 5 free transfers, 1.2 in the bank. So Chow, Marino and Gay on the bench. Okay, so Voltemada would be the one I'd sell to either Bowen or Ekitike. You can't afford Ekitike without making another move and getting an extra 0.1 or 0.2 million. But I think, yeah, Voltemada to Bowen in 18 is what I'd highly suggest in your situation. I think even Marino could be sold. So Marino to Elliot Anderson as well. And if you really want Ekitike, that will give you enough money to do it. I think with the rest, it's quite solid for the time being. Even Enzo Fernandez, who you might want to sell. Yeah. That's what I'd be recommending to you, Heated Gaming, over the coming weeks. But you don't need to make... Well, you would ideally make a transfer now, to be fair. And that's where Marino to Elliot Anderson could come into play. And then next week you do Voltemada to Bowen. I'm 2.4 million, absolutely awful. Still have triple captain and thinking about differentiating with Foden. Thoughts? Yeah, it's not ideal to be at that rank, but it's still early in the season, and I don't think it's as bad as it looks. Ultimately, if you are at this rank towards the very end of the season, it's a different story, but there is still a lot of ground to make up and a lot of doubles and blanks. Well, I say a lot. There are doubles and blanks after Gameweek 30. There will be opportunities for you to rise. This could be one of them, triple captaining Foden. He is second in my captaincy list, but to be quite honest with you, I still think Haaland's number 1. And yeah, if I had a triple captain, even at that rank or lower, I'd probably triple captain Haaland because you can still find other ways to make up those gains. And triple captaining Haaland is still going to be a sort of differential this week. You're going to gain if he ends up hauling. But look, if you've got a good feeling about Foden, you've got to back your gut on that one. Don't just go for him for the sake of being different. Harrison James says 1 free transfer made, Voltemada to Ekitike. Yeah, hopefully for both of our sakes, Ekitike can deliver, but good squad. Haaland triple captain as well, looks very enticing, and you've got a very decent structure, which I like the look of. Even the bench is quite stacked, which is going to be quite useful over Christmas. Thiago is yellow flagged with a knock. He's not necessarily injured. I think he will be available. Van Hecke or Xhaka? I'd start Van Hecke this week. Can I use my free hit in Gameweek 19, or does it reset by then? You've got to use all your chips before the Gameweek 19 deadline. That's what FPL have posted as well multiple times. And then we get into the second half of the season. Bench one of Rice, Mateta and Wilson, says Vishal. Yeah, I did cover this one already, mate. Rice on the bench. Morning, Dylan. Bench one of Richard, Stokowski, Chow or Rice. Kind of similar in principle. I'd probably bench Tarkovsky. Sell Doku to Cherki. It is like for like. I'm not completely against it, but I just think Cherki's minutes are all over the place. And I'd rather go for someone more secure. So I would look elsewhere. And I've mentioned plenty of midfielders. I mean, Szoboszlai is one of them. He is yellow flagged, but I think long-term he's a good choice. There's also Bruno Guimaraes still. and plenty more midfielders where that came from. Even Enzo Fernandez. I think with Cherki, as a short-term punt, it looks decent, but yeah, I'm not completely convinced. Yeah, Danny, as I covered earlier, I have gone for Van Heck myself, so that's my current answer. It would be a Brighton defender, but that could definitely change. Thank you for the super chat here from Deceptive Banana. What a name. Sanchez, O'Reilly, Van Dijk, Hincapié, Timber, Wilson, Fernandez, Wirtz, Foden, Haaland, Thiago, with Dubravka, Xhaka, Estevan, Guiu on the bench. Triple captain on Haaland now. Free hit in 18 and wildcard in 19. Sound strategy. 0 transfers, 2.8 in the bank. Yeah, I think so. I think that looks very solid. There is a case to maybe switch to wildcard and free hit, but I think what you're doing is probably right. Yeah, I think that is the correct sequence. There are certain players that you've got, like Wirtz, that I would just get rid of. I mean, he's been awful all season. But apart from that, I think the rest of your team looks quite solid. But I would definitely be looking at changing Wirtz around. And you've got, yeah, both Guiu, Estev, and Xhaka. So you do have quite a cheap bench, but it does allow you to have some premiums and this sort of structure, which is quite unique. So you've got a few premium defenders. In fact, you've got, I'd say 3 of them. You could even say 4 with O'Reilly. But yeah, definitely sell Wirtz. And maybe if you downgrade him, for example, to a cheaper midfielder, you could then use those funds to upgrade Estev or Xhaka. And Xhaka could become Harry Wilson. To be fair, you got Wilson already. Maybe Elliot Anderson, although that's not a massive upgrade. But overall, I'm very happy with your team. You might even want to consider Semenya for Wirtz. But if you were to do that this week, it's for a -4 here. I'm not exactly sure if it's worth it. Cunha or Wilson for Enzo? Wilson for me still. I have only Timber from Arsenal. Yeah, I did cover your question, kiddo. I'm not going to lie to you. My answer was no. I wouldn't sell Timber to O'Reilly, but I don't know the context of your team. I know you say that the money will help you in terms of next Gameweek transfers, but I don't know what transfers they are. So I think as things stand, I would just say keep Timber, but I could be swayed to a different answer by knowing more context of your team. And if you explain your moves and stuff, that will obviously give me more insight and I can give you a definitive answer. Thoughts on Voltemada to Ekitike? Yeah, Isak minutes is always going to be a concern, but Ekitike has started the last couple of games. He's in great form, and you don't bench a player who is scoring back-to-back braces, essentially. But across all competitions, he has been quite inconsistent. He was quite poor against Inter Milan, for example, and he will be frustrating at times, but I think Ekitike is a good choice over the Christmas period. Maybe not as safe and reliable as Jared Bowen, which is something I might end up regretting very soon. Start Anderson or Lacroix? Joachim Anderson this week. Opinions on Dewsbury Hall to Xhaka? Good for minutes, and I believe he's on set pieces and DEFCON potential. Dewsbury Hall will probably be back by Gameweek 18 or 19. It's not a long-term injury, and I think Dewsbury Hall has a much higher ceiling than Xhaka. And if you're going to bench Dewsbury Hall anyway, and you've got someone else to replace him, for this week at least, I'd just keep Dewsbury Hall. That'd be my opinion. Start Thiago, Voltemada, or De Kuyper? Thiago. Hi Dylan, play 1, bench 2. Bruno Guimaraes, Anderson, and Anderson. Yeah. I would play... I think Bruno Guimaraes. And I sold him, so I know it's going to go wrong. Cheers, thank you Dylan. Got inverts for a short-term emotional punt over the next 3 game weeks. He's looking better every game. Yeah, fair enough. I mean, look, at this point, I understand if you want to just roll with it, but I still haven't really seen enough from Florian Wirtz. Should I triple captain Haaland? My advice is yes. Start Anderson or Virgil. That's a close one. I would be tempted to get Anderson. So how did I get to Ekitike? The main thing was Bruno Guimaraes to Potts, which wasn't ideal. I do like Bruno Guimaraes as an option. That also allowed me to do Burn to O'Reilly, and then I could do Raul Jimenez to Ekitike. And on top of that, before I made all those transfers to fund in Ekitike, I did Dewsbury Hall to Wilson. So there you go. Thank you, Baraf, for the super chat. Hey, Dylan, start Cunha or Bruno Guimaraes or Collins, any 2. I would start Bruno Guimaraes and Cunha. But look, some people will be bullish about a Brentford clean sheet against Wolves. I understand that. I'm not really of the same opinion. I think Wolves will actually score here. But yeah, I would favour the attackers, or the midfielders, so to speak. Would you do Tarkowski to cash and Bruno Guimaraes to Foden for a -4? I'm guessing Tarkowski to cash is what gives you enough money to buy Foden. I think Foden could pay off the hit by himself, but I'm not a big fan of selling Bruno Guimaraes for a -4 hit and also doing Tarkowski to cash, as part of it. So I'm going to lean towards no. Mahrez is going to be United's manager. Wow, that'd be crazy. I don't think so. Matthias says, Donnarumma, Anderson, Virgil, Gay, Timber, Gravenberch, Bruno Guimaraes, Bruno Fernandes, Semenyo, Haaland, Thiago, and on the bench, Voltemada, Anderson, Hincapié. Best starter? I'd consider starting Voltemada over Gravenberch. But I think with the rest, you've probably ordered it right. I mean, personally, I'd start Hincapié. But then you've got Timber already, so yeah, that makes sense. And you're going for a back four. Yeah, I think that's fine. There's definitely a case to say Hincapié over Virgil van Dijk this week, but if it was me, I'd go for Voltemada over Gravenberch, which could age horribly. Dylan, I have Wilson, Saka, Fernandes looking for a Doku replacement. Okay, so Foden would be the standout, but in order to get to him, that's going to be a bit tricky. So looking at Doku's sort of price tag, I do like Bruno Guimaraes still, despite just selling him. I'm not going to like that too much, I think, over the coming weeks. Elliot Anderson is decent as a sort of fifth midfielder, quite consistent and reliable. I think even Xhaka, as someone else mentioned earlier, but yeah, that's an interesting one. I mean, even Matoma will be under the radar at this point. It's not something I'd necessarily push for, but it's something worth considering in the back of your mind. And yeah, Cherky would be like a short-term punt similar to Tavernier. But if you want someone long-term, I think Bruno Guimaraes would be quite solid. Declan Rice as well. You might have a triple up in Arsenal already, so that context obviously would change things. Szoboszlai, Richards or Anderson? I'm going to go for Szoboszlai here. Start Gay or Senesi? Senesi. Cunha for Anderson or Szoboszlai, or keep both? I'd keep both. Enzo to Tavernier or Wilson or Roll? I'd be tempted by Wilson, but I still think that Enzo Fernandez is decent, to be quite honest with you. Brentford's away form has been pretty abysmal. If there's any game Wolves could snag a win, it's this one. Yeah, I think they'll score a goal or two, and they could even pick up a point. So I'm inclined to agree with you. Start free, Anderson, Virgil, Gay, Timber. I'd bench Van Dijk this week, yeah. Rice or Gay? I'd start Rice. Bought in Cherky, Romero, and Ekitike. You put in Romero? Okay, that's interesting. I like the other two transfers though. Cherky short term, some concerns about his minutes, but it is what it is. Ekitike looks solid. Semenyo is fourth on my Campsy list, so I do like him, but not enough to go for him over Erling Haaland, personally. Yeah, I think Haaland's the best captain, and I think Foden's the closest competitor. Would you sell Welbeck for anyone around that price if you're bench boosting? Well, Jimenez and Calvert-Lewin would be the standouts at a similar price, but it's nothing that really stands out too much. I just don't think Welbeck will start, so if you are bench boosting, I think you are making the right decision to sell him. Bruno Guimaraes versus Thiago. I'd start Thiago. Start Conson, Raya, or Kelleher and Van den Berg. I'm going to say Conson, Raya, but to be fair, if it was me, I'd go for Raya and Van den Berg. But that's just my opinion. Play bench boost or triple captain, thoughts? So looking at your squad, I would triple captain Haaland. Yeah. And then use free transfers in 18 or 19 to bolster a bench boost there. Yeah, Minter's not too shabby, I guess. I bought him a couple of weeks ago and he was quite disappointing, but yeah, Minter's still decent. Thiago or Cash? Thiago. What's up, Dylan? Would you play 5-3-2 of this team? So Raya, Richardson, Essie, O'Reilly, Van Dijk, Collins, Saka, Minter, Bruno Guimaraes, Foden, Wilson, Ekitike, Haaland, Krupi Jr. 2 free transfers. When I play a back five, that's actually a valid suggestion. But then that would mean benching Bruno Guimaraes, possibly Minter, and Krupi Jr. I'd definitely consider it this week, but what I'd end up doing is starting Bruno Guimaraes over Van Dijk. But that's kind of my take on it. Worth selling Chalobah for O'Reilly? I think so. Now, Chalobah's been very impressive this season, particularly in the last couple of weeks, but I do like O'Reilly. Is Semenyo still a genuine option? Last big haul before the 6-pointer last week in a goal fest of a match 4-4 was 11 game weeks ago, and you probably would have expected him to score in a game like that. Well, that's why I started, going from, thinking he's the best midfielder in the game, which he was for the first 6 game weeks, to, being very disappointing. His last big return was against Fulham. He produced 18 points. We thought, wow, Semenyo's a completely different player now. And then, he got that assist and a yellow card against Crystal Palace in that thriller. Well, the free thriller. And after that, he got DEFCON here and there, but nothing spectacular. We would expect more, and that's why with Semenyo, I wouldn't be that inclined to captain him. I think the Burnley fixture looks appealing. We saw him score a good goal against Man United last week, but not enough to really have that sort of confidence like we did at the beginning of the season. So you make a good point. Hey, Dylan, start Richards or Anderson? I would start Joachim Anderson. Thank you for the super chat, Rania. So Sanchez, Timber, Cash, Van Dijk, Foden, Wilson, Bruno Guimaraes, Bruno Fernandes, Thiago, Welbeck, Haaland, with Dubravka, Anderson, Chow on the bench, 3.8 million defender, 4 transfers, 1.7 in the bank. Bench boost 19. Yeah, so Welbeck is the priority sell. I mean, you could just start Anderson this week, but with 1.7 in the bank, there is the possibility here to do Welbeck to Bowen, which I do like, and then you can bench boost another 18 or 19. So, looking at the players you've got, I think a Game Week 19 bench boost could work. Just remember, use the bench boost and activate it before the Game Week 19 deadline, because once it passes, we then go into the second half of the season. But, I would be looking at selling Welbeck. I don't think he's going to start. And I think Bowen is the best sort of replacement that you can afford right now without having to make other moves to get the funds necessary. And bench boost in 19 looks very enticing for you. Would you start Szoboszlai or Welbeck? Szoboszlai. Morning, Dylan. Play Calvert-Lewin or Szoboszlai? It's close. I'd lean towards Szoboszlai. Start Bruno Guimaraes or Gay? Bruno Guimaraes. I have Cash, O'Reilly, Anderson, Calafiori, and De Kuyper. I only need 2 on the bench. So I would start O'Reilly, Anderson, and Calafiori. So the players on the bench would be Cash and De Kuyper in that order, probably. Yeah, I think so. Start Thiago or Ekitike? Thiago. Raul or Cunha to start? Raul Jimenez. Wilson in the team, it would be 2 from Fulham. Cunha bench for now. I agree with what you're doing right now. I'd start Raul Jimenez too. Should I start Anderson, Reinders, or Marino? I'd start Anderson, but if you believe that Marino will start, then I think he's worth having a punt on. Because if he plays up front for Arsenal, there's a good chance he gets some returns, and he's been very consistent and very prolific for the Gunners this year. In terms of off the bench, he can also score a very crucial goal, either an equaliser or a winner. So, yeah, I like Marino, but based on my predicted lineups and everything else factored in, I would start Joachim Andersen. Jaxo says Fernandes on the bench. Yeah, as good as Aston Villa are, I wouldn't bench Bruno Fernandes. He has a good record against them, in fact. But looking at your squad, I would probably bench Calvert-Lewin for Fernandes personally, but you might have your mind set, which is absolutely fine. You've got to back your gut and take these sort of punts and go for these big calls at times, especially if you really believe in it. I put in Clive at thoughts. Great fixture on paper against Burnley at home. He hasn't been good this season. He had a few good moments, I think, maybe a month or 2 ago, and I thought he was worth adding to the watch list, but he hasn't really pushed on from that, and the minutes have also been a major problem. I'm behind by 70 points from first place in my mini league. Is that recoverable? Yes, it definitely is. I've mentioned many times that by this stage of the year, I've had examples where I was 90, 100 points behind the mini league leader, and then I end up winning by a comfortable distance. So it's not an ideal situation, and it does put the pressure on you, you could say. I mean, there's one or two ways you can look at it. You can say, well, there's no pressure on me. There's this massive gap, and I've got nothing to lose. But yeah, that could obviously become 100 plus, and then you start doubting yourself even more. But it's definitely recoverable, that's for sure. Leader will still use triple captain today, and I still have free hit, but I don't think I get significant points from it. Well, you said it yourself there, so don't use the free hit if you don't think you're going to get significant points from it. Now, sometimes FPL can be a very funny game, and you get, or you would have gained a lot of points from free hitting in a certain week where you didn't think that was the case, and then when you play it, when you're convinced that you will get points, it's not going to be the case, and you might even get less, which is the worst case scenario. But yeah, I would say the free hit in your situation for 18 or 19. Thoughts on Vissa from Gameweek 19 onwards? I will need to see consistent game time and regular starts. And he played 72 minutes the other day against Fulham in the Carabao Cup, and Eddie Howe said that he played almost too many minutes and more than he would have hoped to have given. But Vissa was playing that well that he felt like he deserved it, and things were going that well. Should I start Anderson, Reinders, or Marino? Covered. I would go for Anderson. I got Timber, Richards, Anderson, Senesi, and Chalobah. Can you bench one? I'd personally bench Chalobah. Hi, Dylan. Bench one of Anderson and Virgil. I'd go for Virgil van Dijk on the bench this time. Kiddo says, Gameweek 18, Semenyo and Senesi to Tarkowski and Szoboszlai, Keane and Cunha. Okay, so interesting. So you're looking to sell both Bournemouth assets. If I had to pick, it's probably going to be Tarkowski and Szoboszlai, but I'm not completely sold on this. I would just keep Timber and not sell Semenyo and Senesi to the options you're discussing. That's just my personal view, though. Can't decide between starting Joao Pedro or Bruno Guimaraes. Understandable. My preference is Bruno Guimaraes. Play Welbeck or Bruno Guimaraes? Bruno. Hi, Dylan. Best goalkeeper combination for bench boost, Gameweek 18 or 19? Best goalkeeper combination? Okay, that's a interesting one. I think Roofs would be quite appealing. I mean, look, with Roofs, that would be mainly for Gameweek 18. Not when he faces Man City, but yeah, that really depends on when you end up bench boosting. So if we're looking at Gameweek 18 specifically, I would say Roofs and probably Sanchez looks decent. I mean, both Kelleher and Petrovic, I don't expect a clean sheet there when they face each other. And I'm not a big fan of spending a lot of money in that position, but yeah, possibly Roofs and even Dubravka with even Pickford. Obviously, Burnley will face Everton in Gameweek 18, but yeah, I think for that Gameweek, Roofs would be the standout goalkeeper. For 19, it would be different. And that's where you'd look at either Ramsdale or Pope, but that could be a concern because if Ramsdale starts now and then we get more news of Pope is back and he's in the squad and stuff, then you just don't know for sure if that's going to happen and if there's going to be a bit of change there. But yeah, I think looking at the fixtures, it's going to be Gameweek 18 for me, and I'd go for something like that. Roofs with, let's say, Dubravka, or if you have enough money and you're willing to spend a lot in terms of the goalkeepers and then you take money out after bench boosting, Raya against Brighton at home doesn't look too shabby. So yeah, that would be my advice in terms of your question. So thank you to those that have been tuning in for the past couple of hours. Be sure to drop a like, subscribe. Let's get the stream up to as many likes as possible. 150 would be the aim and genuinely appreciated. Hit the hype button, share this video around with those that love FPL and UCL fantasy, and keep your eyes peeled for more content over the Christmas period and also in 2026. So it'll be a pleasure to have you on board, and check all the links in the description. There's my Twitter, Instagram and Blue Sky, Dylan RCM. There's my Discord server, FPL and FPL Challenge Leagues, Spotify. Leave a 5-star review. It really helps us grow overall. So a big up to the community and thank you very much. Start Anderson, Szoboszlai, Van Dijk, any two. I'd start Joachim Anderson and Szoboszlai. Thanks, mate. Start Gay or Virgil van Dijk. Not a big fan of either this week, but probably Gay. Hi, Dylan. Bench one of Anderson and Virgil. Yeah, I'd bench Van Dijk as covered earlier. So I'm going to just go through new questions, especially the ones I've kind of answered already. I'm not going to go through them again and again. Hey, Dylan. Bench Wilson or Minter, please. I'd bench Minter. Jeff says, I have Virgil, Timber, Tarkowski, Gay, and Reinildo. I need to replace one of the defenders to afford Szoboszlai. Any advice, please? Well, Reinildo is out because of the African Cup of Nations. He is your cheapest defender and the one I would want to sell the most. But if you really want Szoboszlai, who, by the way, is yellow flagged, I think you'll start, but it's a bit risky to buy him. I would sell Tarkowski in that situation. Yeah, this one has also been addressed, Rami. So I would start Anderson, Calafiori, and O'Reilly. Thank you. Hey, Dylan, should I do Enzo to Semenyo and Timber to Saliba, or do Enzo to Shadow Wilson? I would do Enzo to Wilson. Should I start Anderson, Reinders, or Marino? Anderson. Should I bench Bruno Guimaraes or Joao Pedro? I'd bench Joao Pedro. First sub, Van Dijk or Anderson, midfielder? Probably Anderson. Anderson or Voltemada? I'd still go for Voltemada here. Should I keep Mbeumo on the bench? And if so, who to buy besides Semenyo? Well, Bruno Fernandes is the ideal one. You might have him already, or you don't have enough money to get to him. I still like Phil Foden, of course, Bukayo Saka. In terms of those that are more accessible, I think Semenyo would be up there. The same goes for Bruno Guimaraes, Harry Wilson. Those are the players I'd mainly be looking at the moment, but this can change on a weekly basis, and that's where the wildcard videos come into play. Who to play between Gay and Chalobah? I would start Gay. Hi, Dylan. Should I play Anderson or Vandenberg? Says Maz Shady. I would probably go for Anderson. No worries to Stupaki. Good to see you here, and hopefully your internet improves and returns. Muñoz's 4 yellow cards reset back to 0. They never reset back to 0. What happens is the threshold increases. So instead of 5 yellow cards to get a suspension, it then becomes 10 games. And by that point, the players will need to go 32 matches without getting to 10 yellow cards. Hello, Wilson or Minter, please, on a free hit. Wilson. Hello, Dylan. Defense, bench, headache. Choose 3 of Timber, Anderson, Senesi, Klein, and Gay. I would start Timber, Senesi, and possibly Anderson here. Wolves capable of scoring into the opponent and their own net. That is true. We saw that last Saturday. Thanks, mate. Start Gay or Virgil van Dijk. Gay. Should I sell Szoboszlai? Probably not. I'd keep him. Bench boost this week. Dubravka, Krupa Jr., Rodon, Mukiele. I'm not a massive fan of that, to be honest with you. PC Gamer Tag, but it's better using the bench boost than not using it. And I'm not sure how your bench would look like in 18 or 19, if you would be prepared to use multiple transfers to optimize your bench boost in one of those weeks. But no matter what you do, make sure you use any remaining chips before the Gameweek 19 deadline passes. This is the week I imagine the majority of people will hit 1k points also. Reaction stream today. Yeah, look, if I'm able to do one tonight, I will do a reaction stream. There are 2 matches happening at 8 PM, which isn't ideal. Towards the beginning of the season, it was kind of less common to have this sort of schedule. So, after the last game at 5:30 PM, ending at like 7:30, then there'll be kind of like a gap, a break. People want to talk about FPL, and then we do reaction streams on Saturday. So things have changed a little bit, but yeah, if people want to see it and if I'm available, then I will do a reaction stream and we can continue the discussions and see how we're doing so far. And tomorrow we've only got 1 match, so I'd rather do the reaction stream tonight than tomorrow. I'm on wildcard, already tripled up on the City and Brentford. Can go Fulham, Leno or Sanchez. Oh, it's still Sanchez for me. Hope you're well. What is the best midfielder with 7.4 million budget? I have Szoboszlai and Wilson in the team. I still like Enzo Fernandez, but for me, the best midfielders would be either Rice or Bruno Guimaraes, and I think Rice would pip it. I think Szoboszlai will play. So what I'll probably do is go through all the lineups one more time. And also the top 10 captains. A big up to you, Home Sweet Home. Thank you very much for the super chat. And if you have any questions or comments, then be sure to let me know. Happy holidays to you as well, Safir. Diuf to Gusto. Not Gusto for me. He was actually a skip in my recent Transtits podcast. I'd rather go for different defenders like Nico O'Reilly, Hincapié, although that's very short term and Gabriel could be back in the next couple of weeks. But yeah, not Gusto. If anything, from Chelsea, it'd be Chalobah. Free hit this game or next. I don't know your team, Igor, but in most situations, I'd free hit in Game Week 18. Should I sell Raul and Saka for Ekitike and Bruno G, or wait until next week and sell Thiago instead of Raul? I'll be honest, I'm just not sure. Because you're selling Saka in both scenarios. And selling Raul Jimenez, don't get me wrong, I'm absolutely fine with that, but I'm not convinced about this. Yeah. I was in a similar position as well, and I ended up doing Jimenez to Ekitike through a different means, which was downgrading Bruno Guimaraes to Potts, which is definitely not something I would have wanted in an ideal world. But yeah, I'm just not convinced about the transfers you're talking about there. Start Cash or Anderson? Anderson. You can also see it in terms of Anderson in my starting 11 and Cash on my bench. Hey Dylan, would you keep Morgan Gibbs-White and roll to 4 free transfers or transfer him to Semenyo? I'd sell him to Semenyo personally, but it's not like a must-have or you have to do this. It's just like something I would do to optimize your team. Wilson or Minter for free hit? Wilson. Bench boost of Dubravka, Elliot Anderson, Gay, Calvert-Lewin. Looks decent on paper. I'm not against that bench boost. I don't get people playing Fulham defense. The XGC is awful. I think with Anderson, it's mainly DEFCON potential. I'm not a massive fan of Anderson, and I've always said that. But there you go. If I didn't wildcard a couple of weeks ago, Anderson would not be anywhere near my team. And I think also the short-term fixtures were really appealing, but we saw their defense against Burnley. It's not good. -4 Vicario to Raya. I don't like goalkeeper transfers, particularly for a hit, but I think long-term this will pay off. What I'd probably do is just start Vicario now and sell Vicario to Raya in 18 or 19. Start free, bench 1. I'd bench Grealish, personally. Should I sell Szoboszlai? As I said earlier, no. ¿Qué dos jugadores dejarías al banco entre Cash, Virgil, Minta y Raúl Jiménez? Dejaría Cash y Virgil van Dijk en el banco. Punjabi says 2 free transfers, 1.4 in the bank. So Calafiori, Enzo van der Ven on the bench. That's a pretty decent setup there. Yeah, I think overall it looks good. I would maybe consider starting Calafiori over Chow. And in terms of Enzo Fernandez, there is a case to start him over Voltemada. But yeah, what I would do personally is Calafiori in for Chow and change the bench order so you at least have Enzo Fernandez first on your bench and Chow would be second. In terms of transfers, I don't think you need to make any more moves now per se, but in the future, as I've said to multiple people in today's stream, Bruno Fernandes is the main midfielder that you're kind of missing, in my opinion. Start Krupa Jr. or Anderson. There is a chance that Krupa Jr. starts, to be fair, and if you really feel that way, it could definitely be worth that sort of punt. I'd probably take a punt on Krupa Jr., to be fair. I think so. Thank you, Sid, for the super chat. Hey, Dylan, start 2 between Richards, Mukiele, Cash, Minter, and Anderson. Also playing triple captain this week. Yeah, look, Foden is a great option for the captaincy. He's in fantastic form, but I would lean towards Erling Haaland. In terms of your starting question, I would go for Minter. And I think in this case, I'd go for Elliot Anderson, but it's really, really close. Let me know what you're kind of leaning towards, but yeah, that would be my answer. I'd definitely start Minter and triple captain Haaland. Who should I start, Voltemada or Anderson? Voltemada. -4 Dewsbury Hall to Wilson for bench boost. Not a massive fan of that, but If you're really happy with the rest of your bench and you feel like Dewsbury Hall's the only one letting you down, then I would go for it. Otherwise, you might even have as good of a bench boost, if not better, for 18 or 19 without the -4 hit. And that's what kind of determines the answer to your question. But I'd lean towards yes. The chips reset after the Gameweek 19 deadline. So after this deadline has passed, we're going into Gameweek 18, of course. And then we have another opportunity after the Gameweek 18 deadline. But essentially, yes. So just to look at the date specifically. So the Gameweek 19 deadline is on the 30th of December. So in 10 days' time, you want to use all your remaining chips before that deadline passes, because after that, that's it. You go into the second half of the season, and any chips from the first half of the campaign will be burned, essentially. Okay, so thank you to everyone who has been tuning in. Let's see where we're at. So let's get the likes up to 150. It would be greatly appreciated, and a massive thank you to those that have done so already. And I will be going through different screens, just one more time, especially the top 10 captains and all the graphics, the clean sheet odds, and the predicted lineups. Thiago or Chow? Well, I've been very consistent on this. Thiago for me is the one I'd start, so Chow on the bench. Start Rice or Bruno Guimaraes? Close one, but I'd go for Rice. Keane or Van den Berg after Gameweek 17? After Gameweek 17, well, Branthwaite could be available in January. The thing is, he gets injured so often that Keane always gets back into the starting 11, but I think I'd go for Van den Berg simply because Branthwaite could be available again very soon. Best defender for 5.2 and below. For this week, I like Senesi, but looking a bit longer term, yeah, it would be Chow. Start Anderson, Richards or Konate? Anderson. It's close between him and Richards. Exactly that, as Safir says, only 50 minutes left. Make sure to lock in your teams. And now it's going to be 30 minutes. Will Thiago start? Yes, I think so. And you're going to see my predicted lineups one more time. Start Klein or Van Dijk? Klein. Best replacement for Thiago? I'd personally keep Thiago, but if you were to replace him, I think Bowen or Ekitike. Shall I get bench boost out of the way? Other option is to sell Chow instead of Gvardiol for a Sunderland defender, or sell Van der Ven and buy a 4 million with my team I mentioned. Yeah, okay. I was going to say, I need to see your team. So, Raya, Timber, Chow, Gvardiol, Saka, Bruno, Semenyo, Foden, DCL, Thiago, Haaland, with Dubravka, Van der Ven, Rodon, Dewsbury Hall on the bench. Shall I bring in Tavernier for Dewsbury Hall and O'Reilly for Gvardiol? I have the exact money. I probably would. The thing is, Dewsbury Hall is not going to be out long term, according to David Moyes, so he could still be your ideal 8th attacker. And just a bit unfortunate that he got that injury, right? So that maybe pushes you towards selling him. And I do prefer Dewsbury Hall over Tavernier long term, but there is a nice fixture now against Burnley where Tavernier could get a decent return. So I like the transfers in, but if I'm looking a bit at the bigger picture, and also the fact that you want a bench boost, yeah, it's a very difficult one, but I'd probably lean towards prioritizing the bench boost, get it out of the way, and ultimately you might feel like Gameweek 18 or 19 looks better for your bench boost. And that's why go to FPL.team, compare the fixtures, and there you can make a definitive decision. But as much as I like O'Reilly and even Tavernier short term, I'd probably not do it. No worries, Keith. Remember, you can't play free hit back-to-back game weeks. Exactly. That's a great point. And yeah, that's definitely worth bearing in mind when, if you're free hitting in 19, you cannot use it in Gameweek 20 as well. And nor do you want to. You want to ideally use it for the doubles and blanks after Gameweek 30. Thank you, Awali. A big up to you and also all the moderators, super chatters, patrons, and channel members. Bench one of Minter, Raul, Thiago, or Bowen? Bowen. As much as I like Bowen against Man City away, I'd bench him this week, but in the future, Bowen would be one of the best forwards throughout Christmas and going into the new year. So, yeah, reluctantly, I would say Jared Bowen. Thank you, Wally. Again, Grande Dylan, Start Van den Berg, or Gay? I'd lean towards Gay. Yeah. Bench one of Minter. Sorry, I just covered that. The chat just refreshed, so I didn't see which ones I've gone through. When is the last call for free hit? Before the Gameweek 19 deadline, yes. So essentially, it is for Gameweek 19. You can play the free hit in Gameweek 19, but once that deadline passes, that's it. You go into the second half of the season. But yeah, if you use it in Gameweek 19, you can't use it in Gameweek 20, which was pointed out by a viewer just now. You would have to wait until Gameweek 21 to play the free hit again. Bench boost, Dubravka, Mukiele, Anderson, Giyu. I'm not a massive fan, to be honest, Goldhead, but yeah, if you get 10 plus points, you'll be happy with that sort of return. I get your point. I might not either, but I need to get rid of Dewsbury Hall to play bench boost this week or the next. Yeah, true. True. I mean, Gavardio to O'Reilly does seem sideways, but it does give you the funds necessary. It's a very tricky situation, I think. That's the thing. If you keep Dewsbury Hall, you could then maybe bench boost an 18 or 19. And you might even have better fixtures by that stage for your 15-man squad. So that's where the kind of balancing act lies. Because you can get Tavernier and you can get O'Reilly now and have a decent bench on paper for 17 as well. I'm going to say go for it and get O'Reilly and Tavernier. But I still think long-term, Dewsbury Hall and even Wilson are better options than Tavernier. Bench Collins, Van Dijk or Lacroix. I would bench Van Dijk this week. That's not something I'll say too often. Jimenez and Anderson to Potts and Ekitike. I've done something identical to you. I'm going to say yes. Radia says, my team is Raya, O'Reilly, Timber, Richards, Chalobah, Rice, Foden, Bruno, Wilson, Thiago, Haaland, triple captain. Looks really solid and not many complaints from me. The only weak link, if you will, is probably Chalobah, but that's only because of how difficult Newcastle can be away. So we've only got 8 minutes left, so what I'm going to do is quickly focus on the top 10 captains, which has been, a very big talking point today. I would triple captain Haaland if I still had that booster, and Foden would be the closest to him when it comes to the rankings. Igor Thiago still third. You could argue that he shouldn't be there. Semenyo, Saka are also in the top 5. I've gone for Mateta, Ekitike, Fernandes, Palmer, and Wilson as well. So, clean sheet odds as well might help you in terms of choosing between different defenders and who should I bench and all this stuff. City, Arsenal, Bournemouth, Brighton, Brentford and Fulham are in the top 6, and West Ham are last against Man City away. So, someone did ask me earlier, in fact it was easy I think, so this is how it works. Maybe I should just go back to this. So, as you can see, between Gameweeks 1 to 19, we can use the bench boost, free hit, triple captain, and wild card. You have to use these chips before the Gameweek 19 deadline because then we approach Gameweek 20 until the end of the season, which marks the second half of the campaign. So I'm going to let this play out. Of course, we all know about AFCON. I even highlighted the players who are going to be missing in the predicted lineup section. And these are the blanks and doubles as we know them at the moment. And I think this information was even known for a couple of months, really, based on the schedule. So blank Gameweek 31 and 34, and double Gameweek 33 and 36. That's what we're probably looking at when it comes to those chips. And you can see a full breakdown in my chip strategy guide. So make sure to check that out. And also the key changes to FPL video. But what I'm going to do now before going back to your questions and locking everything in is talking about the predicted lineups. So Calafiori is back from suspension, and I think Arsenal have a few key concerns in terms of the left wing and striker positions. So we could see Martinelli or Eze on the left and Merino up front, but I've gone for Trossard and Gyökeres, assuming they're fit. And the same goes for Emi Martinez in goal. He is still a doubt, and we could see Marco Bizot, but I think Emi Martinez will start, and Matty Cash is 1 yellow card away from suspension. With Bournemouth, Adams is going to be a massive blow. He's out due to injury, and also Milicevic in the defensive line. So Diakite and Senesi should be nailed on, and Semenyo is definitely the standout from the Cherries. Moving on to Brentford, Igor Thiago is doubtful with a knock, but I think he will start. And also it's worth noting that Dango Ouattara is going to be unavailable due to the African Cup of Nations. So yeah, I think Lewis Potter could start in a more advanced position, and Sharda could be shifted to the right-hand side. Brighton will have Matoma return from injury, and he could start on the left. And I think Jorginho Rota will be the main striker, with Danny Welbeck potentially injured and not ready to start. Moving on to Burnley, both Walker and Pires are back from suspension, and I think Fleming could be on the bench here, with Broja starting up front. And with Chelsea, Caicedo is back from suspension and will likely go for this 4-2-3-1. Crystal Palace essentially have a sort of locked-in team, but rotation has been a bit more frequent with them because of their congested fixture schedule, and Oliver Glasner essentially confirmed this lineup in his press conference. Kamada is out due to injury, and with Everton, they've got multiple players out due to the African Cup of Nations like Ndai and Idrissa Gana Gueye, and Dewsbury Hall is injured, but he should be back fairly soon, maybe even for Burnley away in Gameweek 18. With Fulham, Bassey's going to be unavailable. The same goes for Iwobi and a few other players like Chukwueze. So I think Cuenca, Lukic, who is yellow flagged, and Kevin could be the replacements there. Leeds United have been in fairly decent form and they've got some value in certain positions. Even Calvert-Lewin up front is scoring the goals in the absence of Nemecha. Liverpool have Dominic Szoboszlai as a doubt, but I think he'll start in the absence of Mohamed Salah due to the African Cup of Nations, and they could go for this sort of structure here with Gravenberch, Jones, McAllister, Szoboszlai and Wirtz all starting together. Gakpo could also be available very soon. And with Man City, Doku is going to be injured for the next couple of weeks, and we could see Foden on the left with Reinders and Cherki starting together. Man United have a lot of players unavailable due to AFCON, so Mezraoui, Amad Diallo and Mbumo, and both Casemiro and Maguire are injured. The same goes for De Ligt as well. Newcastle are decimated at the back, and Nick Pope could start in goal, but I'm going for Aaron Ramsdale at the moment. So Miley could be the right back, Lewis Hall on the left. I think Livramento will be out for a couple of weeks, and that could also reintroduce Joelinton to the starting 11. Murphy versus Alanga is always going to be a debate. We could also see Voltemada be rotated because of Visser. Nottingham Forest will have Douglas Luiz replace the AFCON-bound Sangari, and the rest is probably what you would expect. Hudson-Odoi was outstanding in Gameweek 16. And with Sunderland, they've also got a few key players unavailable due to AFCON, but one of them is Diarra, and he's going to be in the squad against Brighton away, most likely on the bench. Tottenham Hotspur could go for Paulinho and Bentancur in the midfield in yet another big game, but Archie Gray has been playing fairly well in recent matches, and this is what they'll probably go for against Liverpool at home. And I think West Ham will go to a back five against Man City, and we could see Igor Julio start instead of Kilman. And finally, we've got another team with a back three in Wolves. There is no Agbadu here, and obviously in the case of West Ham, no Wan-Bissaka. And I think Wolves will go for this 3-4-3, and Doherty will play as a centre-back. So that's all been covered. FPL Challenge will be discussed very soon, but what I want to just kind of highlight here is my final team. So I've got Sanchez in goal against Newcastle away. Dubravka is the alternative against Bournemouth, also away. I've got O'Reilly, Anderson and Hincapié as my three defenders, with Foden, Wilson, Saka and Bruno Fernandes as the four midfielders, Ekitike, Haaland and Thiago up front. Matty Cash is first on my bench, Klein is second, and Potts is third. He was brought in to fund in O'Reilly and Ekitike. So this week I've sold Dewsbury Hall and Byrne, who are both red flagged, and Dan Byrne will be out for a while, whilst Dewsbury Hall should be available very soon. And I also sold Raul Jimenez and Bruno Guimaraes, and I'll be honest, I'm not happy about selling the latter. Play Anderson from Fulham or Richards? I'd lean towards Anderson. I predict 4-1 City Sissafair and Newcastle 2-1. Yeah, I've actually gone for the same Newcastle scoreline and 4-0 to City. Should I start Virgil or Rice? I'd go for Rice. If you think DCL might be fit next game, yeah, I think Calvert-Lewin will be fit. I mean, we got a lot of updates yesterday in the press conferences, but yeah, I think Calvert-Lewin will be fit. He's not even yellow flagged at the moment, to be fair. Play Minter or Mukiele? Minter. Play Jimenez or Voltemada? Very, very close one. I'd lean towards Jimenez. Ekitike has to outscore Bruno. Let's see if my luck will change. I hope he does. That would be very, very nice. Andrew, I just saw your super chat. Please bench two of Minter, Voltemada, Richards. I'd bench Richards, and I think I'd bench Voltemada. So I'd start Minter. Very, very close between those two attackers. Let me know what you're thinking at the moment. We've got 10 seconds left, but I'd definitely bench Richards. And I think I'd bench Voltemada as well. Very, very close one. So we have gone through all the super chats and also member questions. So I do appreciate that. And yeah, we are locked in now. Bench Mukiele or Chalobah? I would have probably benched Chalobah there. Very close though. Next week I might sell DCL and Saka for Ekitike and Rice. -4 or after this set of transfers. Yeah, I'd ideally do that for free, not for a hit. I think DCL and Saka, though, have been in very good form recently for you, and it's hard to sell Saka at the moment with the consistency for the last 6 game weeks, essentially. Hello, Dylan. Bench boost with Anderson, Vandenberg, Richards, and Dubravka. Also got Igor Thiago. It's a decent bench on paper, and I would have probably used it as well in your situation. Hi, bro. As a punt for 1 week, as I'm wildcarding next week, so I'm Boomer for Shada and Stein over Raul Jimenez, I would have said no. Hi, Dylan. Which 2 to bench? Chow, Rice, Minter, Thiago. I would have benched Chow and reluctantly Declan Rice. Enzo for Shada or Cunha? I'd personally keep Enzo Fernandez. If you really wanted to sell him, then from those two, probably Shada. Bruno G to Bruno Fernandes. Yes, but it's not something I'd rush towards. Like, this week is not really the time to buy Fernandes, in my opinion. I think Gameweek 18 would be better. Start Minter or Chalobah? Minter. Caicedo or Xhaka starting 11? Well, Caicedo's more likely to get DEFCON, but Xhaka is arguably a bit more consistent when it comes to assists anyway. I think this week I would have gone for Xhaka. A new AFCON and AFC for Asian Cup, 5 transfers in 2027. Hopefully not. Play Jimenez or Voltemada? Yeah, Jimenez just about. Richards or Anderson start? I've gone for Anderson. I had a similar situation with Klein instead of Richards, and that's what I went for. Help me choose 2 from Gay, Van der Ven, Kudus, Anderson. I would have started Gay and Anderson from Forest. Good luck all. Haaland, 5 goals incoming. Well, I hope he doesn't do that, but yeah, I think triple captainers will be hoping on that. Rice or Gravenberch? Rice. My attackers: Haaland, Foden, Saka, Bruno, Minter, Wilson, Thiago, Ekitike, bench 1. That's a very difficult one. I'll be honest, in this one, I'd probably bench Minter. Sefer puts his team. So Haaland triple captain, bench Guimaraes, Chalobah, Alderete. Looks solid. I don't necessarily disagree with what you've gone for. There is maybe a case to start Guimaraes over one of those midfielders like Rice, but that's certainly up for debate, and you've got a very good setup on paper. Good luck as well, Sidindra and Genius Gamer, and everyone else who's been tuning in. Thank you, H-Army. Merry Christmas to you, and good luck. Have a happy new year. Enjoy the festivities with your family and friends. Home Sweet Home says my lineup: Sanchez, O'Reilly, Timber, Rice, Bruno Guimaraes, Fernandez, Foden, Thiago, Haaland, Raul Jimenez. 0 transfers, thinking of getting Rice to Semenyo and Bruno Guimaraes to Wilson for a -8. Triple captain Haaland. Don't. Let's see what the rest of the message says. Maybe you put it after. But I like it. Except for the -8. I'm not going to lie to you. But everything else looks amazing. That's just the only thing I'll be like, yeah. But triple captain Haaland, I wish I had that this week against West Ham. I think he's going to score a brace or a hat-trick. And the rest is in a very good position. Struggling to pick out flaws or things that I don't like about it. All the best for the FPL managers and Dylan. Thank you very much, Awale. Thank you for all the moderation you've done and all the contributions to the chat. And feel free to ask any questions and have any comments in future streams as well. Always love tuning into your stream. Keep going. Thank you, Ashish. Very nice of you. And hopefully you keep on coming. Decided to use my other 2 free transfers to take some punts by selling Raul Jimenez and Saka to Ekitike and Shada. Arsenal's next 3 fixtures are tricky, and Ekitike looks on form. Hoping Shada performs. Are they good transfers? I think Raul to Ekitike is a massive upgrade. I've done the same. I'm concerned about selling Saka, though, personally. I could have done Saka to Semenyo, and that could have allowed me to keep Bruno Guimaraes, for example, but yeah, in your case, you've gone to Sharda. Good fixture this week against Wolves away, but yeah, I'm quite mixed about it, because I think on one hand you made a massive upgrade, and then on the other you've made a significant downgrade, in my opinion. And Saka's been in great form for the last 6 game weeks. Merry Christmas as well, Sidindra. Dylan, have a great one. The same goes to you and your family. Thank you very much. All in all, thanks, Dylan, and chat. Good luck praying for Haaland Hall. I'm not, but it is what it is, right? Good luck, Sophia. I did transfer right on the button. I then panicked, played bench boost. It says active, but clock said 11. Do you think it has gone through? Yeah, but I think... So maybe I don't remember this correctly, but normally you have to save your team after playing the triple captain or bench boost. You have to click save team. And at least you would see a notification or something on the top that says your team has been saved. So if that's the case, then yeah, it would be active. But there have been examples over the years of people having a few bugs with that sort of thing when they leave it to the last second. Is it valid to use bench boost for this game week? Got Dean Henderson, Elliot Anderson, Mukiele and Virgil. Yeah, it is valid, and it is a very overrated chip in general. So I think getting rid of it actually can be sort of like a weight off your shoulders. It can be really useful. And I think that could get 10 plus points, and in a single game week, that's a solid score. While Munoz is out for a couple of weeks, which I've talked about for the last couple of videos now, and he'll probably return in early January, and we'll see how that progresses. But Nathaniel Klein will be the short-term replacement for him, of course. With Danny Welbeck, I read out the quote by Hurstler earlier, and it all suggested that Welbeck will not start. He might be in the squad, but he is not in a position to start games for Brighton right now. Hopefully the internet is sorted soon and can moderate properly. No worries, Mr. Parky. I appreciate you tuning in. And yeah, the internet can be a bit annoying sometimes. Which games will you hit 1,000 points? Maybe after the Man City game, I guess, since I've got a triple up. Unless Pep does a Pep and benches all of them, which we all know about in UCL Fantasy. Now, to be fair, that is... so that game will take place... Let's see. Yeah, 12:30... Let's see, 3 o'clock. Yeah, I'd say the City game is when I'm going to hit it. Because from Bournemouth, Burnley, I've got no one. I've only got Sanchez against Newcastle. Yeah, that's the answer to your question. It's not a very interesting one, unfortunately, but that's how it is. 10 times Dylan, you the man. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Hey Dylan, good to see you. My starting 11, Raya, Van Dijk, Timber, O'Reilly, Foden, Semenyo, Bruno Fernandes, Minter, Wilson, Haaland, Thiago, triple captain on Haaland. A lot of triple captainers today on the Norwegian robot, which is understandable. It's definitely the best opportunity left on paper for the first half of the season. And good squad. I like the look of it. Almost the first half of the season. Which player are you frustrated to buy? Welbeck would be up there recently. Salah at the beginning of the season was very frustrating. I think because of the price tag, the expectations, he would also be one, and it prevented me from having Erling Haaland at the beginning, so maybe a Salah, actually. I think it'll be Jorginho Rota starting up front. I don't think Danny Welbeck will play. So just to read out that quote one more time, and then I'm going to go through my squad and predictions and FPL challenge. Let's just... yeah, let's get this quote up. So Hurstler said, "There's uncertainty about his ability to start the upcoming game, but definitely the issue is not healed yet, and he is still restricted during the training week. The team has a strong leadership group who could potentially step up as captain if Danny is unavailable." So there you go. And for those who asked about Igor Thiago, the exact quote on him. So Jordan Henderson and Thiago picked up little knocks against Leeds. I don't know if they'll be available, is the honest answer. They've been with the medics today, and we'll see how they are going into the game. So I personally think he will start, but only time will tell when it comes to that. So let's go to FPL Challenge first. I've got Raya in goal, Van Heck as my only defender, Semenyo, Rodgers, Wilson, and Haaland captain. So this week, it's called Home for the Holidays. So any player with a home fixture will score double the number of points. And that's why I'm looking to potentially sell David Raya. And I think Van Heck anyway is not a great pick in isolation. So I am open to changing this to a different defender. And I need to have at least one. And I think going for 3 midfielders is what I'll probably lean towards in the end. So let me know what your FPL Challenge team is looking like as well. And let's go through my scoreline predictions. So for the early kickoff, I've gone for Newcastle 2, Chelsea 1. And we will get the lineups very soon. In fact, in 5 minutes. So I'll go through them, answer some remaining questions and comments, and then maybe call it a day. But if you want to see a reaction stream, let me know in the live chat. Drop a like, subscribe. All of that would be genuinely appreciated. So let's get Chelsea and Newcastle's lineups when they're ready. Let's get this up. Okay, so in a few minutes I'll be going through it. Thank you, Maro, for the super chat. Massively appreciated. Raya, Klein, Anderson, Gay, Bruno, Saka, Foden, Semenyo, Wilson, Haaland, triple captain, Thiago, Chow, Mukiele, Giu, and Dubravka. Thoughts on bench boost next game week? 2.4 million in the bank and 2 free transfers. Okay, so I think your team is well poised for a bench boost there. What I would look to do, though, is potentially upgrade Giu if possible. That's the only player that kind of lets it down in a way. But yeah, the rest looks really solid. The problem is finding... Well, you do have 2.4 in the bank, to be fair. So Giu to Bowen would be perfect. But yeah, you would be like 1 million off. So in order to get to Bowen, which is what I'd recommend, that's where this becomes very tricky. But you don't really have any premium defender. You've gone quite cheap at the back. And that's allowed you to go quite heavy in the midfield because you've got Bruno, Saka, Foden, and Semenyo. Wilson's your only budget pick there. So very interesting setup. It's still very solid. I like Chow. He's good. Anderson short term is fine. Same with Klein. And Gay long term is going to be very good. But yeah, Raya at least covers Arsenal defensively. Because something you might want to consider if you want to do Giu to Bowen is maybe Raya to Sanchez. But that means no Arsenal defender whatsoever. That would be the main concern. But yeah, I think bench boost next week looks really solid. I would do it as well. I think it does look more appealing in 18 than 19 in your situation, based on the fixtures and also your 50-man squad. So, yeah, let me know what you're thinking there, Maro, in terms of maybe you had similar ideas of Mark Giu up to Bowen, but if not, and you just want to keep it simple, have David Raya, not tinker too much elsewhere, then you might have to settle for a Calvert-Lewin or Jimenez, which might not be ideal, but it is definitely an improvement on Mark Giu, that's for sure. Move down from Semenyo to Szoboszlai and get Bowen. Yeah, I think that looks good. But we have to see if Szoboszlai gets booked, because if that's the case, he's going to miss Game Week 18. But yeah, if he goes through the Spurs game unscathed, then yeah, I think that looks like a really solid transfer. And in the long term, let's say, for example, he's not suspended for Game Week 18, you buy him in, but then he's suspended for Game Week 19. It's not a big deal because you have the squad depth to sort of compensate for that. So yeah, good idea there. I like that. Have Semenyo for this week and then go to Szoboszlai next, and that allows you to get Bowen, which looks really appealing. So that's a very good setup and very promising for the Christmas period. Yeah, I think Thiago will play against Wolves. It's not a guarantee though. Just the Parky says, oh damn, that probably means it's not active, I forgot. And Tavernier is last on the bench without bench boost, damn. In which case I might just do Saka to Rice and DCL take a TK -4 and play bench boost next week. Yeah, let me know. Maybe in a reaction stream later tonight, or just in the next few videos and streams, what ended up happening for you, Twisted Parky. But yeah, hopefully that the bench boost is active and you were able to, yeah, just, well, enjoy some points in the end, because that would be quite frustrating. There are no matches on Christmas Day. There's only one on Boxing Day on the 26th, and that'll be Man United. Slot not even looking at Salah's assists last game week. Is their relationship broken? I mean, you can look at all these things in a lot of detail, but in the end, he was recalled into the squad. He was the first sub that Arne Slot made, and he played very well. But he's now off to the African Cup of Nations, so they can forget about this saga for a little while longer, and then we'll see what happens in the future. But it's a very weird situation because literally last year, things were going so well. A lot of people sold Semenyo thinking he left for AFCON. That's called not knowing your geography. Well, it's because Ghana didn't qualify, ultimately. FPL Challenge 1-1-3 formation. So I've gone for 1-3-1. Interesting that you've gone for 3 forwards. Our predictions are eerily similar. Hopefully that's a good sign, and we get some of them right. Smash the like, as Sophia says, thank you very much. Chelsea beat Newcastle 3-2, says Easy. Spurs beat Liverpool 2-1, and Fulham beat Forest 2-0. Wow, so Chelsea fan is very confident of beating Newcastle. Maybe not very confident, but... So Twisted Parky says Newcastle 2, Chelsea 1, Bournemouth 3, Burnley 1, Brighton 1, Sunderland 0, City 3-0, Wolves 1, Brentford 2, 2-1 to Liverpool, 3-0 Arsenal, I hope so, 1-1 between Leeds and Palace, 2-1 Villa against United, and then 1-1 between Fulham and Forest. Interesting predictions there. What's your learning from FPL so far, luck or tactics? There's always luck involved in any fantasy game. I've always said that. By improving your decision making and having a plan, being able to adapt, those things will only improve your chance of getting lucky, but there's never a guarantee of getting luck. In FPL, UCL fantasy, you name it. But I think the key learning from FPL this season has been to not rush transfers, even though I did that this week. But I think over the past 2 months, I've been quite stable. So I've just been making transfers here and there and not rushing into things. And so that has allowed me to get these green arrows, save the wildcard until now, and that could bode well for the second half of the season. So that'd be the main takeaway. Thank you, Mauro. Gracias por los insights, Dylan. Fiestas felices. Para vos también y tu familia. Gracias por el super chat y todos tus comentarios. Y buena suerte para la jornada 17 y el resto de la temporada. I don't mind if I miss bench boost if I had Tavernier at least. First bench, otherwise transfer pointless. Yeah, that's exactly the problem. And Tavernier's main appeal is the Burnley fixture this week. So that's the thing. I went Arsenal 2-0. Yeah, I think it will be low scoring. Everton might struggle a lot, and I hope they do, because they have no Dewsbury Hall, Ndiaye, Idrissa Gana Gueye, and Branthwaite. These are key players. And I think in particular Ndiaye and Dewsbury Hall missing out, that's a massive blow for them. But Arsenal have been very poor in recent weeks. Newcastle not in good performance, especially FPL. Well, they had a good start in the Champions League, right? But they've been very inconsistent in the Premier League. We've seen that, and they just struggled to get that real consistency. But I think over the last couple of weeks, we've seen more from them. But not enough, I think, to sustain a top 4 challenge. I captained Saka last week. This week, back to Haaland. Yeah, not too bad. Much better than my captain last week, which I'll not mention. But yeah, Saka was, I think, second in my list last week. I think Haaland was third, which is very rare for me to do. But yeah, this is a sort of week where you just look at Haaland and think it's very easy. I'm not sure if of you Everton 1-1 prediction. They have no Gueye and Ndiaye or Dewsbury Hall. Yeah, I think Grealish is available. David Moyes said he's fine, but it's just Arsenal really struggle at Everton Stadium. This will be the first time at the Hill Dickinson Stadium, but out of the last 7 meetings away from home, Arsenal have 1 win against the Toffees. And before that, they had a very good record, but it has been different in recent years. Yeah, Branthwaite is a massive blow as well. I've started Gordon over Thiago. Let's see what happens. Also kept Mateta for now, almost a differential with engaged managers. Yes, people will be forgetting about Mateta, but he still has a part to play over Christmas and going into the new year. So I think keeping Mateta looks like a solid idea. And this week, I prefer him over Ekitike and Bowen, who would be the 2 standard replacements in the long term. I think Gordon's interesting as well. He's a big game player, and he's showing a lot of form recently. How many points did you get in your best game week? Mine was Gameweek 13, I think. It was where I triple captain Igor Thiago and he got me 39 points. I can have a look now. In fact, I will do that whilst also getting the lineups ready because Newcastle and Chelsea are good to go. Their lineups came out 4 minutes ago. Okay, so my best week. Actually, I can't check it because the website's updating. I think 90 something. I don't think I got to 100 yet so far, but I'll double check that. And what I'll probably do is make a note of it so I can answer this question in the reaction stream or the next time that we speak. But hopefully it is tonight. And yeah, we can talk about this. So let's go to the lineups here. So Newcastle have started Aaron Ramsdale, Hall, Cher, Tonali, Gordon, Chow, Murphy, Voltemada, Bruno Guimaraes, Ramsey, and Miley. So still no Joelinton. And that's 10 correct predictions there for Newcastle from my predicted lineup. For Chelsea, it's Sanchez, Gusto, Chalobah, Fofana, Cucurella, James, Caicedo, Neto, Palmer, Garnacho, and Joao Pedro. So in this one as well, I got 10 out of 11 correct. They're starting Garnacho again, and that means no Esteval, and also no Enzo Fernandez. So yeah, that is going to be very disappointing for Enzo owners. I know a lot of people in the live chat today discussed selling him, but I am surprised by him being benched. So we'll see how that ends up going. So let's go back to my FPL team. And answer a few more questions. Isak will regret leaving Newcastle once he reflects on his career. Well, if it continues like this, yeah, for sure. And no one expected him to flop this badly. There's still time. The same goes for Wirtz, but so far it has been horrendous. Are we too hopeful that the real-life players perform so well for our FPL teams? Well, not really, mate. I mean, someone can perform well and not get goals or assists. But ultimately, when we're getting these fantasy assets, you want that on a consistent basis. But yeah, sometimes you can be hopeful, like with Raul Jimenez or some player who isn't really that consistent and you're expecting a lot from them. But you have to temper your expectations sometimes. In the end, I had 92 points. Yeah, that's a very good score. Yeah, I think 90-something would be my best so far this season. So playing against the Toffees has a history of getting a bit sticky. Yeah? Hopefully not today. That game will take place at 8 PM tonight. Yeah, if I did a reaction stream at, let's say, 7:30, maybe that's not a good idea because I might end up raging looking at the Arsenal game. The biggest haul on my bench was Van der Ven against Everton, right? Yeah. I haven't had too many massive hauls on the bench this season, but it does sting when it happens because you had the player in your team and they just aren't going to give you any points. So, yeah, it's painful to look at. I've got Enzo in my team. Yes, I never expected that. I thought Enzo would start. And that's why I thought maybe Palmer would shift to the right and Chelsea would go for something a bit different. But yeah, they want to have two natural wingers in Garnacho and also Neto. And Maresca's gone for this sort of rotation here. How long until FPL stays in play and how long until we play this game? For many more years, I think, but never say never. It has been going on for a while, even before it became mainstream and it was only in newspapers and stuff. And yeah, it's been going on for like 20 years and I think it really gained attraction and, well, I say traction in the last 10 years. Thoughts Gordon would play as Barnes played in midweek. Yeah, I get that. And sometimes they can play together, and then Voltemada's on the bench, and they've also got Visser now, so there are more options for Newcastle offensively, but at the same time, they are decimated at the back. Is FPL part of our addiction in sport? I don't know. I mean, I cover it on my YouTube channel. I find it a lot of fun, and it's a way of engaging with the sport and being emotionally invested in teams and players that you don't really care about, because ultimately we'll have our teams. You support Chelsea, you know who I support, and I think of a game like this, you start to actually care about these things as well. I think some people are addicted, but not all of us. I mean, maybe in my case I am. I've spent a lot of hours building my channel and making videos on this and doing streams, but I find it fun, and I also try to keep it balanced and healthy so it doesn't become too much. Yeah, I think I've messed up because my main team says save your team. My dad's second team says your team has been saved. Yeah, I think so. I mean, you'll find out in like 20 minutes when the game fully updates, but yeah, it's not exactly how you want to start the game week. Hopefully, it's the best news possible and you're able to, yeah, just have Tavernier and enjoy your bench boost. But if not, play it next week and, yeah, move forwards and really optimize your bench boost for Game Week 18 and get it out of the way. And then you can just focus on your starting 11 from that point onwards. Thank you, everyone. It has been a blast talking to all of you for the past couple of hours. If you haven't already, like this stream, subscribe to my channel, hit the notification bell, and also click the share button. There's also the hype button on YouTube, so you can do that as well. And we are in the Christmas period now, so enjoy the festivities with your family and friends, and I'll see you very soon. Hopefully tonight for a reaction stream. I'll keep you posted on it, and there's going to be more content headed your way for Game Week 18, and for UCL Fantasy, of course, that will return in 2026. So we have just over a month, actually, until the next deadline there. And in the meantime, there are plenty of FPL deadlines and game weeks to talk about. And that's what you will find on this channel with the definitive coverage, best wildcard squads, transfer tips, team selections. Sometimes you'll get different bits of content like free hit squads, predicted lineups, you name it. And let me know your thoughts and your feedback in the comment section and in the live chat. I'll see you very soon. Good luck for Game Week 17 and the rest of the season. And yeah, enjoy the football and the festivities. I wish you a happy Christmas or a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. Take care.